I call this meeting of the Davenport Community School District Board of Directors to order. Let's start with our priorities. Director Gossen, would you read those for us, please?
I got it.
Priorities. The Davenport School Board establishes the following priorities to ensure the academic success of all students. Provide leadership and direction to improve the overall learning environment in our classrooms, schools, and district, including the health, safety, security, and happiness of students and staff. Direct and support actions, programs, and activities which reduce the impacts of poverty on our students, their families, and our community.
Thank you very much. Director DeSalvo, would you please read our mission and vision statements?
Mission statement: to enhance each student's abilities by providing a quality education enriched by our diverse community. Our vision statement: education that challenges conventional thinking, prepares all students to compete in a global society, and inspires our students, parents, staff, and community to answer the question, what if?
Thank you. And I have to say, we're honored tonight to have a bunch of special guests, and we're pleased that all of you are here to attend our meeting. First off, we have Dr. Kabilski, who's going to give us a presentation, let us know what's going on with the superintendent position. Dr. Kabilski.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good evening, everyone.
Is that on?
It is now.
Okay.
All right. Good evening, everyone. It's been about 8 weeks since I saw you last.
Put it up. You need to.
Sorry, I'm
There you go.
6'1", so it's going to be an issue for us over here on this one. It's been about 8 weeks since we've had a conversation, and I do have some progress that I believe is getting us closer to our end game, and I'd like to explain that to you. As you know, I've been working for the last 8 weeks to alleviate some issues with my credentials with regard to their datedness, given the fact that I received my administrative endorsements and licensing from the state of Illinois in 1999. As a result of that, I enrolled at Loyola University's superintendent certification program 8 weeks ago, as if I was an aspiring superintendent, despite the fact that I've been a superintendent for the last 11 years. As a result of a thorough analysis of my credentials, the program director informed me that I needed 5 additional classes to get a 2019 superintendent endorsement, at which point I enrolled in those courses, and I do recall telling you about that. Over the course of the last 8 weeks, I've been able to navigate those courses while maintaining a full-time job. So 15 credit hours, 5 classes, graduate level work, straight A's, all done, finished. So really pleased to have that under my belt. Those classes ended on June 30th this past summer, and pleased to have that done. Also, during that time, I was able to work with the archivist at Loyola University. Now, it makes me sound really, really old when I talk about having to work with an archivist to dig up program descriptions from courses that I took back in 1999, but that's the reality of it. And we've been able to find those. So Mr. Horstman, who was in charge of examining my credentials at the Board of Educational Examiners Office, had requested those program descriptions, and we were able to locate those going back to 1999 with the archivist. So as of last Monday, I have forwarded to the Board of Educational Examiners, and Mr. Horstman in particular, the program descriptions that he had requested of me going back to April. I've also sent transcripts for 3 of the courses that I took. 3 of the 5 courses were from Concordia University, 2 from Loyola University. So I sent the transcripts from Concordia University, and I sent the grades from Loyola. I had to wait a little bit for the transcripts from Loyola because one of my professors was on a mission trip to Puerto Rico and had to come back and sign off on some paperwork. However, that has since been accomplished. I now have transcripts from Loyola University, which I've requested be forwarded electronically to Mr. Horstman at the Board of Educational Examiners Office. He emailed me this afternoon and asked if I could just forward those directly to him from my email account, which I will do when I get back to Wisconsin. So as of this evening, the Board of Educational Examiners has an updated packet. The only thing that they'll need first thing tomorrow morning is official transcripts from Loyola University. I do anticipate a positive outcome. I should also point out that the information that I forwarded to the Board of Educational Examiners office last Monday was the same information that I forwarded to the Illinois State Board of Education. And this past Thursday, the Illinois State Board of Education issued me a superintendent endorsement and an additional superintendent license in the state of Illinois based on the credentials and the coursework that I just completed at Loyola University. So now it's all in the hands of the Board of Educational Examiners. The coursework is done, the grades are done, the transcripts will be there tomorrow morning in complete form, and it's a matter of waiting for the decision. But I am optimistic that we'll have a positive outcome. I will say that the Board of Educational Examiners and Mr. Horstman in particular have been very professional, been very prompt. Every time I've sent an email alerting them to information that was coming their way, I received a response within 2 to 3 hours. So again, very professional, well-run office, and I couldn't be more appreciative of the attention and diligence that they've been giving to my application, and I wanted to say thank you to them. Any questions? It's not a formal presentation, but you now know what I know.
Thank you very much. And in my haste to get the meeting started, I failed to mention that one of our board members, Director Potts, is on the line. And we have determined that it's appropriate and legal for board members to participate by phone if they need to. So he's also here. I just wanted to make sure everybody's aware of it. This is an important presentation. It's an important issue. And I don't want to get into extended discussion, but especially any questions for clarification, direction, I would open it up to the board at this point. Anything? Well, looks, huh? Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Director Potts, they're asking if you could mute the phone until you're ready to speak. Okay. I guess he did it. Director DeSalvo.
Dr. Kubilski, did Mr. Horstman give any indication of when he thought his review would be complete?
When I submitted my materials last week, Monday, he said it could take up to 4 to 6 weeks. However, based on the emails that have been going back and forth, it appears to me that he's giving it a great deal of attention, and immediate attention. I can't speak on his behalf, but like I said, I've been pleased with the responsiveness from that office, and I'm hoping for a quick response.
Thank you.
Anything else? Director Potts, do you have anything?
No, I don't.
Okay, thank you. Well, Dr. Kubilski, we're all hoping that this happens quickly. I think it's important to everybody in our community and to the district, to the board. Everybody wants this to happen soon, so we're rooting for you.
Well, and I appreciate your patience, and please know that the moment I receive my license from the state of Illinois, I'll be in my office the very next day. So thank you very much.
All right, thank you. And thank you for coming all the way down here just to make those comments. Thank you very much. Are there any board reports? Director Director Gosa.
My hair's not that good, come on. I do have one thing. This past weekend, I was up in Ankeny, Iowa, with some of our Little League ball players. That a few of them go to Wood Junior High, and the rest go to Smart Intermediate. We were playing for state for baseball. We were hoping to move on to regionals, but it didn't work out with the weather and everything else. We kind of got behind on pitch counts and stuff. So, but the kids did a great job. They came to play. I would just wish we would have got to go all the way to regionals and then the Little League World Series, but it didn't work out, so there's always next year.
Thank you. Any other board reports? All right, we'll move on to communications. Director Beck, would you please read those for us?
Yes. On August 1st,
Thursday, the Iowa State Board of Education meeting in Des Moines. The time and place is to be determined, but the educateiowa.gov website will have updates. We will be presenting at that meeting. And on August 5th, Monday, we have our Committee of the Whole meeting at 5:30 p.m. in the ASC Jim Hester Boardroom, 1702 Main Street, Davenport. On August 12th, Monday, we have a regular meeting at 6 p.m. here in the Jim Hester Boardroom. On August 26th, Monday, is the first day to file candidate papers with the board secretary to run for school board. You can visit the district website for information on running for the school board, davenportschools.org. Under the school board tab, there is a school board election information link. And below, there's an announcement about that, and I will speak to that in just a second. On August 26th, we also have a regular meeting at 6 p.m. here in the Jim Hester Boardroom. And then August 26th is also the first day of school for the Davenport Community School District. The announcement, candidate packets, and nomination papers are available for pickup from the board secretary, Mary Carruthers, room 204D in the second floor of the Achievement Service Center. That's this building, or they can be downloaded from the district website listed above. Candidates can start collecting signatures as soon as they get their papers, and they are required to have 50 signatures.
Automatic voice message system.
Bruce Potts.
Which are from unique individuals who live in the district. An informational session for those interested in running for school board will be conducted at the ASC, this building, in early August, and the date will be announced soon. You will be able to find that on the website. Additional resources for anyone interested in running for school board can be found at the Iowa Association of Schools, with who will be conducting live webinars called Tuesday Talks with the IASB. That time will be noon to 1 p.m. on a number of different dates, and you can register on their website. And Mary Carruthers, our board secretary, who sits over here in the corner, is happy to answer any questions you have about running for school board, and I can personally say that she is extraordinarily helpful in that process. She helped me a lot in figuring out what exactly I had to do in order to run a couple years ago. The election is going to be in November on our regular election day. And Mary's number is 563-336-7431 if you have questions, or you can email her. I'm sorry, not on the regular election day. The following week after regular election day. So what is that, the second Tuesday in November then? Okay, we'll make sure we put it on the website.
Yeah, it'll be posted in plenty of spots. Okay, thank you very much. Before we move to open forum, I had a missed board report that we wanted to get in. Director DeSalvo.
I apologize, I failed to mention this earlier. Director Potts and I have been working with 2 city council members over the last probably 6 or 8 months, having meetings with the 4 of us, just talking about things happening in the city, things happening in the district. It's been very valuable. Together, we have come up with a memorandum of understanding that we will be presenting to the board in September. So we have a really good relationship with the city. We understand to be successful, we have to work together, and we're building on that relationship. So very excited about that, and just wanted to provide an update and know that's coming in September.
Thank you very much for that, Director Allison. Or Director Beck, I'm sorry.
Mary just pointed out that November 5th is election day for school board. So, but the deadline for filing is September 19th. So between August 26th and September 19th is when candidates can file their papers.
Okay, thank you very much. Next is open forum. We do have a few open forum requests. Looks like 4 requests. And open forum is a time for members of the community to give input at a board meeting regarding school district issues or concerns. Individuals who want to speak should fill out an open forum request and give it to the board secretary prior to open forum. The board will not act on any issue presented during open forum if it was not published as an agenda item. The Iowa Open Meetings Law prohibits action on any issue that is not on the agenda. The president will set the amount of time allowed for individuals to speak during open forum. The board asks that no charges or complaints be made against individual employees of the district or community during open forum. Remarks that reflect negatively on the character or motives of any person will be called out of order. All right, so each of you will have 2 minutes. Come up to the microphone, give us your name and address, and we'll start with Lola Van de Wally, followed by Dan Dolan, followed by Erie Johnson and Heather Johnson. And we'll start with Lola.
I've met most of you before in meeting. Is that on? Okay.
Yeah, before you start, I need your name and address.
My name is Lola Vandewally. I'm representing the Quad City Veterans Outreach Center at 2720 West Locust Street, Davenport, Iowa.
Okay.
Good. I've met and spoke to you before. I'm speaking on behalf of veteran housing tonight. I had come to your meetings before about a school property that was possibly being sold to Dan Dolan. And as I told you before, our center opened 3 years ago this fall, and this month we will break over 1,100 members of our center that comes to us for assistance. We work with veterans organizations clear across the Quad Cities, and our number one need is veteran housing. We have many opportunities and things in our community. Veteran housing is not one of them. I have worked with Dan Dolan personally for 20-something years. He makes the projects happen. And when these projects happen, this is going to benefit our community and most of all our veterans. We have beds in our shelters. We have beds in people's homes. We need to be able to offer them more than that. And that's what I'm here to speak to tonight. If Dan builds this veteran housing project with the school property, we are going to have many opportunities for our veterans to have their first apartment or an apartment since they've been back from war or serving our country. And he has made these things happen. Not only does he make them happen, but for the district itself, it'll be a huge tax base back to our community that goes back to our schools. So there are many things to consider. But on behalf of the veterans, this is something we desperately need in our community. We don't have it on the Illinois side and we don't have it on the Iowa side. And I would like all of you to give it very serious consideration. And if you want to see the need, I ask you to come and visit our center and talk to the veterans that we have. And we serve 50 to 60 a day. Saturday, we serve 326 that just came for a food basket giveaway. Come and talk to them and see the need that exists in our community if you have any doubts at all what we need. And I thank you.
Thank you, Lola. Next is Dan Dolan.
My name is Dan Dolan. My office is 2660 East 53rd Street in Davenport. I'm a local developer, business owner, landowner, landlord, and home builder. I've built a couple hundred houses in town, so I understand how important it is to provide housing and tax base. The last meeting I wasn't able to get to that you had here, and I heard it was still being, my offer was still in consideration. Recently, I thought I saw on your agenda that you're considering finalizing on an offer from another entity. I just think it's very important to consider my offer is almost 10 times the amount of this offer. And by returning it to the tax roll, this is somewhere between a $12 and $14 million project. Just assuming that the school district gets 1/3 of that amount, that's going to be somewhere $160,000 to $180,000 a year as an annuity. From my understanding of how it's set up, churches are tax exempt. So obviously, as board members, your commitment is to the school district and the children. So I am very passionate about this veterans program. Lola called me when she thought about starting her outreach center, and I was one of her early contributors. I have 3 sons in the Army. That old saying, "No man left behind," veterans experience twice the national rate of homelessness in the United States. They did what we asked of them. I think this is something that we can do to help our veterans. And as Lola said, the need is there, and it's just striking need. I have nothing against churches. I go to church. It's just there's a distinct need there, and I think from the school district's perspective, an offer of 10 times that amount and returning it to tax rolls has to be considered. I guess that's what I have. Do you have any questions?
Thank you, Dan. We don't really have an interaction between open forums. But thank you for.
Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much. Next is Erie Johnson.
Hello, my name is Erie Johnson. I live at 2429 East Lombard Street, Davenport, Iowa. Since the last time I was here, I did learn some more information about the Sudlow budget cuts. I wanted to share that information, particularly last year, there were 2 foreign languages offered at Sudlow. One taught French, one taught Spanish. Now, starting in 7th grade, the administration has decided to cut the Spanish teacher. She's now a half-time teacher, and rearrange the French teacher schedule, who's also certified to teach Spanish, to teach both classes. The problem with this is that 119 students, 7th graders, have signed up for a foreign language, and only 71 of them for Spanish and 48 for French. And out of those 119 students, only 1/4 of those students will be able to take a foreign language in 7th grade. This is done in spite of the fact of the usefulness of foreign language, the fact that it's been proven to improve reading fluency, verbal skills, increases test scores, improves memory, helps the student perform better in college, and boosts career prospects. A study recently published talked about 3 years ago, talked about students who took foreign language in middle school are more fluent and more confident than students who began in high school. I think we talked about this last time. Having multiple languages under your belt is going to make our students more marketable. They're going to be marketable not only in the Quad Cities, but they'll be marketable outside of the Quad Cities. We are a global community. I'm trying to prepare my daughter, and I think everybody wants to prepare their kids to compete not only with Quad Cityans, but also with the national world. And by cutting these languages, reducing the credit hours that you're able to get, it's just not working. It's not going to work in the long term, and I don't think that it's a good philosophy that the district should take into saving money. A couple of more points I wanted to make. This district itself pointed out and I won't say bragging, but pointed out that it was proud of the fact that students who took foreign language could take 7 years of foreign language coming through the Davenport School District. After this change, at the most, the students will be able to take is 5 years. And that's assuming they basically take out other classes. And so the trump of the idea that you're going to let these students still maximize their abilities in the foreign language is just not true, because the options are being taken away. Some of the things I would like this board to consider when they're talking to the administrators, when they're thinking about what's going to happen, is you have to also think about, in the end, have to note that the teacher that went to halftime was one of the few teachers of an ethnic diversity background. Schools in Davenport has 18% black students, nearly 14% Hispanic or Latino students, and 10% multiracial. I don't think everybody here knows that the school teachers do not reflect that. And now that the one teacher that was full-time, she's been cut to halftime. And I think realistically, if you think about her ability to do halftime here, and I think she's doing halftime in a remote area, that the strain on her is not going to last. She's qualified. She's probably going to go somewhere else. And I think that's probably the plan, or more than likely. Not for her, but I think that's what the district is hoping that she would do, so they don't have to deal with this in the end. So when she does that, now you have one less student, one less teacher of ethnic diversity in the school district. You do have some staff, but I think still it doesn't reflect what you have, and she's obviously a very qualified teacher.
Hey, Yuri, you're going to have to wrap it up.
All right.
Okay.
All right. Bottom line is, we know the district has some issues. Some errors were made and misguided steps were taken. We're not here to judge them on it, but the bottom line is that when you have to make these errors, the errors have to go back on the people responsible. You have to hold the people accountable. The students absolutely were not responsible for what happened, and the teachers weren't responsible for what happened. Whether it's the budget cuts because of inequity and discipline, whether it's a budget cut for whatever reason, Dr. Tate is not even the reason. There's more than one person involved here. So if you're gonna have to make some cuts, you're gonna have to look somewhere else to really make this fair. You should not be taken away from the students' options and their future. Thank you.
Thank you, Erie. Next is Heather Johnson.
My name is Heather Johnson. My address is 2429 East Lombard Street in Davenport. Just as a housekeeping matter, I was here last time, and right after that meeting, I did request to be added to the agenda and sent that to your secretary. She immediately got back to me and said, okay, I will forward that request, and I never heard anything back. So I would like to formally request again to be added to the agenda to talk about these important matters with Sudlow and their budget cuts. So I assigned my husband to talk about the foreign language cuts, and I'm going to talk about the cuts in music that I think are detrimental to our students. So, you know, an area of distinction, particularly for Sudlow and Central, has always been our music programs. And now we are the Sudlow administration is planning to cut those, and not in a way that to me makes sense, because, you know, a lot of this has been told these are budget cuts, but the problem, or the program that they're trying to do away with is the sharing of choir and band or orchestra. And so it used to be that they alternated so that students could take both instrumental music and choir, and that would take only one period of their day. Now that's important because as 7th and 8th graders, these students only have 2 periods that are elective periods where they get to actually choose what they take. So if you're now the proposal is to require these students who want to participate in 2 kinds of music to use their only 2 periods to do so. So if you want to take choir and you want to take band, then you can't take a foreign language. You can't take the exploratory wheel, which includes consumer sciences, computer classes, and arts. So you're really limiting our students in what they can do, and it just doesn't make sense, because the teachers are there. The teachers are willing to work with each other so that they can do what they've always done, which is allow these students to take both choir and instrumental music and in only 1 period, so that they're alternating and not taking those classes every day. And I also think it's important to point out that the districts around us do this. They alternate so that students can take choir and an instrumental program. PV does it, Bettendorf does it, and you know, I know that I've heard that maybe other middle schools in Davenport don't do it. That's a shame. And you know, we talk about being a district of distinction. Well, let's be a district of distinction for what we do offer and not what we don't offer. That's what I feel like we are becoming. We're becoming a district of distinction because we're cutting, not because we're enhancing what we're offering to our students. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Heather. Thank you to all of our attendees tonight that joined us up here. Thank you, Lola and Dan and Erie and Heather. It really is important when you come up and speak to the board and to our community on these really important issues. So thanks again. Excuse me 1 minute.
Yes.
All right, next is the consent agenda. May I have a motion?
Mr. President,
Director Gosa.
I wanted to remove section 5.01 to have a discussion on that from the consent agenda.
All right, you should probably make that after the motion has been made to
Oh.
consider.
All right, well,
So-
make the motion.
Okay. All right, go ahead.
I recommend that the board accept the purchase, or wait a minute, I'm on the wrong. Whoops.
No, you need to,
There's no-
I
you need to
recommend that the
remove
board
it,
accept the consent agenda as presented.
Yes, thank you.
not present it. You can't, because that will approve 501.
It'll be okay. It'll be
All right,
okay.
but that's not the way we normally do it.
It'll be okay.
All right,
The motion has been made. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, you want to go ahead. Go ahead.
I would like to remove section 5.01 and have a discussion on that.
Okay, thank you. So 5.01 has been removed. Other than that, the rest of the consent agenda, which is 502, 503, 504, 505, 506, and 507 are still on the table. Is there any additional discussion? Director DeSalvo.
I have a question about 5.06, the SAM Services Agreement. Who would answer that? Thank you. Is this a renewal, and did the price change, and are you happy with the results?
This is a renewal. It's something that allows us to use Time Tracker, which there's a daily meeting that occurs with all of our school administrative managers and the principals, and they talk about what instructional practices did our administrators use during that day, and they pre-schedule the next day to ensure that follow-up conversations and walkthroughs and instructional practices are being done. And so this provides us a level of coaching. It also provides what's called the time track. Time track, there's a human that comes and shadows the administrator for 3 or 5 days, depending on the level of experience that they have. And that person does nothing but code what that principal does all day long for 3 straight days. And then that's the baseline, and it determines whether or not improvement is made in the areas of instruction and goals and things of that nature.
So it sounds like you're happy with the results we're getting?
Yes.
And is this a price change?
I do believe this is similar or less. It's dependent on the number of SAMs that we have. And so
Sure.
I do believe we have one less SAM last year as we made an adjustment from the Children's Village. So I believe this is less than last year. It's a
Okay.
decrease.
Thank you. I have another question. 5.07, the CTE contract or consulting. And perhaps I should know this, but what is the Cork Perkins account?
Actually, we have Jen Boyd
Oh, Jen?
to answer your question. Yep, come on up.
Okay. So I'm Jen Boyd, Career Tech Ed Curriculum Specialist, and the Carl Perkins Grant is a federal grant that we apply for every year. It's based on the number of students we have in our district, and it is money that is designated for Career and Tech Ed, increasing our programs, increasing enrollment, making them more high quality.
Do we know if we secured it or you just?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful.
Got it for next year.
Perfect. Thank you. That's all I had about that one. And that's it.
Director Gosa.
I had a question on that one as well. I was just kind of looking. This dude is like super expensive. So what are we getting out of that? I mean, are we just paying for his logo and name, or?
No, actually, he's not as expensive as many consultants or people that are used to support districts. He's a deal, I would say. He comes and visits with us 4 times a year. We have a CTE specific team that meets with him, and then he supports us in all of our marketing, our recruitment, our intention, and enrollment programs. So this year, we're going to be rolling out a CTE Student Ambassador program that he's going to be supporting us with, as well as increasing our teacher understanding of how to market their programs and recruit the right students, the right programs for the right reasons, to ensure that what we're providing our students is what they really need to be successful.
And don't get me wrong, I think it's a great program. When I seen that price tag, I was like, holy cow, that's not a lot of hours for what we're paying. So, and then I seen that he gets paid to set up for the meeting with you too. That's crazy. Do we negotiate that with them, or they're like, that's what it is?
That's pretty much what it is.
Okay, thank you.
But we do have the ability to end the contract at any time, no matter what. So if we feel that his services are not being well utilized and it's not worth the funds, then we can stop the contract. However, I think the results in 1 year speak for themselves.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? All right, we'll call for the vote, and remember that this is for the consent agenda as written, with the exception of 5.01, which will be addressed right after this. Oh, excuse me, Director Beck.
Sorry, I almost forgot to ask my question. Oh, wait, no, I'm in the wrong section. Never mind. I don't have a question till later. Sorry.
I want to be sure all of these are listed as being on the consent agenda, but I have votes for individual minutes. Is that just, we don't have to do all that?
That is the consent agenda. That's all
Right.
part of the consent
No,
agenda.
I understand. It's just that there are votes called for each one of them.
No,
On my paperwork, there are.
no, just
Okay.
regular.
All right. So I'll call for the vote. Director DeSalvo,
Yes.
Director Hayes,
Yes.
Director Potts,
Yes.
Director Beck,
Yes.
Director Mayfield,
Yes.
Director Gosa,
Yes.
and my vote is yes. Motion carries. Thank you. May I have a motion regarding 5.01? You're okay. Just go ahead.
Mr. President,
Director Hayes.
I move that the board accept the consent agenda item number 5.01 is written.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Director Hayes.
I have a question there. There were some newly created positions there also. And I thought we had put a hiring freeze out. And with the hiring freeze, how did additional positions come forward?
So we set the staff reductions, and from the staff reduction list, we've had more people leave. The equivalent would be if we said we were going to reduce 2 administrators and 5 left, we would replace 3 of them. So I believe the staff reduction, the position you're talking about is the position of HR office manager. Is that what you're asking about? So in our human resource office, they had made the cuts that were necessary and then had an additional person leave. And that person that left was at a salary level of here, and we replaced it with a lower level salary position. We would have made that position a secretarial position, but the positions of HR, associate superintendent, superintendent cannot have secretarial positions. They need an assistant, an administrative assistant, or office manager type position. So that's why that decision was made.
Were those positions posted internally before externally?
This position, we placed that person in because they were displaced from their job due to the budget cuts originally, and that person, we believe, was qualified to accomplish all the tasks on the jobs, which was something that we had done in past practice. In attempts to make sure people had jobs, that was something that we attempted to do all along the way of our pink slipping and riffing.
Thank you.
Director Gosa.
I was going to ask those same questions, but Director Hayes beat me to it. One other thing I had though, for like coaches and stuff, how is that determined?
Are you talking about the number of coaches?
Who gets the spot?
Oh, they're interviewed at the building level.
Right, but then when that interview doesn't go right, they don't get the right candidate, then they do it again.
Yeah. It's our typical hiring practice.
So if people are qualified to do it, but that's not the person they necessarily want, they go back out and then have that person come and apply.
If somebody's qualified but they don't win the interview, so to speak, that does happen sometimes.
And then who is on that committee? Who's on?
The committee's generally a building level person, sometimes the district athletic director, and an administrator.
Okay.
The high school level, it's the athletic director and other constituents involved.
Any other discussion? All right, we'll call for the vote on 5.01, which is appointments, resignations, retirements, leaves, etc. Personnel. Director Hayes.
Yes.
Director Gosa.
No.
Director Mayfield.
Yes.
Director Potts.
Yes.
Director DeSalvo.
Yes.
Director Beck.
Yes.
My vote is yes, motion carries. Thank you. May I have a motion regarding approval of bills?
Mr. President,
Director DeSalvo.
I move that the board approve the following resolution as recommended by the administration for adoption of the bills for the bill listing periods of June 20th, 2019 through July 3rd, 2019, special release by the board president, and July 4th, 2019 through July 17th, 2019. Resolved, all claims presented to the board having been duly certified as correct by the secretary, reviewed by the administration and board members, and they are hereby audited and allowed as just claims and warrants drawn on the treasury for the several amounts. Further resolved, the payment of claims and salaries be approved as presented for the periods of June 20th, 2019 through July 3rd, 2019, special release by the board president, and July 4th, 2019 through July 17th, 2019.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Director Hayes.
Yes, I have a quick question. I'm not sure who I would direct it at. With the budget cuts that we have, extensive budget cuts to the point of people losing their jobs, why are we paying $1,577.40 for cupcakes when we have a bakery?
That's a good question. That's more than likely a account that it comes out of student activities. That's probably a fundraiser. I would almost guarantee that that's what that is. They raise the money and then they sell cupcakes as a fundraiser. Happens all the time.
Yeah. No, I didn't hear what Mary said.
They purchase the cupcakes and pay the money back.
Sorry, I forgot to use the microphone. I'm always telling you.
Mary. Oh, my God.
Claudia might want to say something else, but I guess my guess would be more than likely that that is a expense that comes out of student activities. So it doesn't, it's money that the kids raise and then they.
It totally is. It's Cracker
Yeah.
Cupcake.
Yeah.
It's a fundraiser.
All right, thank you. Any other discussion? I'll call for the vote. Director DeSalvo.
Yes.
Director Hayes.
Yes.
Director Potts.
Yes.
Director Beck.
Yes.
Director Mayfield.
Yes.
Director Gosa.
Yes.
My vote is yes, motion carries. Thank you. Is there a superintendent report?
Not at this time.
Okay. We'll move on to other items requiring action. First is a public hearing May I have a motion on the approval of plans and specifications for the network refresh project?
Mr. President,
Director Beck.
I move that we have a, I move that we have a public hearing on the approval of plans and specifications for the network refresh project.
Can you read the rest of it?
It's actually the public, you want me to do the public hearing reading?
Well, the notice of the hearing.
Oh, okay. We will now hold a public hearing on the approval of plans and specifications.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, I apologize. We will, is there a second to the motion?
Second.
All right, thank you. We will now hold a public hearing on the approval of plans and specifications for the network refresh project. A notice of the hearing was published in the Quad City Times on Friday, June 28th, 2019. Anyone wishing to speak on this item, please step forward to the microphone. State your name and address for the record. Okay, seeing and hearing none, I now declare the public hearing closed. Is there any additional discussion on this matter? Director Beck.
I was just wondering if we could get a little bit more detail on exactly what this project is.
These are the last two buildings of the project we started 3 years ago, where we renew all the network cabling, the new paging system that will be able to be hooked up to new emergency systems when those get placed, new VoIP system, so that everything is up to snuff.
So this is just the
Under
end.
budget and under time on all of this.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Is there any additional discussion? All right. I'll call for the vote. Director Beck.
Yes.
Director Gosa.
Yes.
Director Hayes.
Yes.
Director DeSalvo.
Yes.
Director Potts.
Yes.
Director Mayfield.
Yes.
And my vote is yes. Motion carries. Thank you. We have a second public hearing. I have a motion on the approval of plans and specifications for the Secure Access Project.
Mr. President,
Director Hayes.
I move the board approve the plans and specification for the secure access project.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
We will now hold a public hearing on the approval of plans and specifications for the Secure Access Project. A notice of the hearing was published in the Quad City Times on Friday, June 28th, 2019. Anyone wishing to speak on this item, please step forward to the microphone. State your name and address for the record. Seeing and hearing none, I now declare the public hearing closed. Is there any additional discussion on this matter? Director Beck.
I was under the impression that this project was actually completed already.
We did the secure access to the front office section. Now we're doing other doors that would also need card swipes.
So the doors that are basically not the front doors, the doors that are all locked all the
Doors,
time
for
now.
example,
You're
that
putting
one of the things that we're trying to do is take away all the master keys.
Mhm.
We have a lot of them out there, and by putting in the swipes, changing the locks after that project is done, that way nobody can get into the building without anybody knowing at any point in time.
Okay, thank you.
Director DeSalvo.
Yeah, I was going to ask which doors these were, but I think you've answered that question, so thank
Okay.
you.
Any additional discussion? Okay, we'll call for the vote. Director Hayes.
Yes.
Director Gosa.
Yes.
Director DeSalvo.
Yes.
Director Potts.
Yes.
Director Mayfield.
Yes.
Director Beck.
Yes.
My vote is yes. Motion carries. Thank you. I have a motion regarding approval of membership dues and policy subscription with IASB.
Mr. President.
Director Hayes.
I Move that the board approve the membership dues and policy subscription services with Iowa Association of School Boards.
Thank you. Is there a second? Is there any discussion? Director DeSalvo.
I would just say that this board decided that we were not going to renew this membership several years ago, and then we brought it back this last year. And they've been a huge help to me in many ways when I've reached out for them with questions about legislative advocacy or financial questions. So I strongly urge the board to once again approve this membership because it has been very valuable.
Any additional discussion? I have a question about the policy subscription services. Does anybody know exactly what's included there?
I do.
Director Beck, thank you.
They have a policy manual, which has templates for all required policies and not required policies for school boards across the state. And they also have a primer, which I have not explored a lot yet, but the policy reference manual, basically you can search on any term you want. You can search for a specific policy. Anytime the policy committee is looking to either add a policy or change it, that's the first place we go. But it is a separate subscription service that we pay. But anybody in the district can log in and use it.
But it is included in this $12,650.
Yes, it's $750.
Okay, thank you. Any other discussion? All right, we'll call for the vote. Director Hayes.
Yes.
Director Gosa.
Yes.
Director Potts.
Yes.
Director Beck.
Yes.
Director DeSalvo.
Yes.
Director Mayfield.
Yes.
And my vote is yes. Motion carries. Thank you. I have a motion regarding the membership dues for the UEN.
Mr. President,
Director DeSalvo.
I move that the board approve the annual membership dues of $9,000 to belong to the Urban Education Network of Iowa for fiscal year 2019-20.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Director DeSalvo.
I would again say this is another resource that I have used. We get a lot of information from them that has proven beneficial in helping me when I had questions, or they give us weekly updates. We have a link to their site. So again, a really helpful group, and I would strongly urge the board to approve this.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Call for the vote. Director DeSalvo.
Yes.
Director Gosa.
Yes.
Director Potts.
He's disconnected right now.
I just lost him.
Yeah.
Director Beck.
Yes.
Director Mayfield.
Yes.
Message system.
Bruce?
Is that you, Director Potts?
He's not on yet.
Oh, okay. Director Hayes.
Yes.
You're trying to get a hold of him, Mary?
Joe is.
Oh, okay.
I'll ask him how he votes. I'll text him.
Static voice message system.
Some of them aren't as good as I am. I know. AT&T? Get a new provider.
Director Potts, are you there now?
I am here now.
All right. Did you hear the motion and the discussion on the approval,
The urban,
the request for the UEN? Yes.
I,
Did we lose him again? If
I
so,
think his reception must be bad.
yeah, I'm sure it is. He's in a remote location, so I apologize for that. I'm
I mean,
going
we
to
could
go,
put him on my cell phone if you want and put a microphone down. I don't know how you want to.
well, we have several items to discuss.
I was good connection until just a second ago. I was there for the whole meeting. I don't know what the deal is.
Yeah, you're breaking up now, Director Potts.
Okay, so is he voting yes when I'm getting wise there?
I don't know. Did you hear the motion and the second and the discussion regarding the approval of membership in the UEN?
I heard the motion and the second. I was not able to hear the discussion.
Yeah, there wasn't much discussion. There was
Have
only,
you voted already?
well, we're just in the middle of voting when we lost you.
Okay.
But I don't know if it's fair for you to vote without having heard the discussion. Director DeSalvo, you're the only person that I think discussed anything. Can you recall what your comments were?
Yes, I was just stating how I've used resources at the Urban Education Network to help me when I had questions again about finance issues or legislative. We're on the finance side, but they've been a good resource, and I was urging the board to approve this renewing the membership.
Okay, so that's the only discussion, and then there was a vote. I think it would be inappropriate for me to allow you into the discussion at this point, Director Potts, but I will allow you to vote.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, and my vote is yes, motion carries. May I have a motion regarding approval of membership in the RSAI?
Mr. President,
Director DeSalvo.
I move that the board approve the annual membership dues of $650 to belong to the Rural School Advocates of Iowa for the fiscal year 2019-20.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Director Gosa.
The price dropped on this, didn't it? Wasn't it like $700 or $800 last year? Did the other ones go down in price, or they stayed the same?
It didn't go down. Sorry, this is really loud. I have noted in board docs under, for you guys, I explained that when you have a subscription to ISFAS, they discount the membership by $100, and we do belong to ISFAS, so that's why it's less. Okay.
Okay. Is there any additional discussion? All right.
Wait.
Oh, excuse me, Director Beck.
In the same note, apparently if we have a negative spending authority, we can request a fee waiver.
That's correct.
Have we done that?
The board, well, did you want to?
Yeah, I'll go ahead. That's correct. The RSAI has offered for districts in negative spending authority that the fee can be waived to $0. The district, I think last year, opted to go ahead and pay the fee because it was relatively so low, especially for the benefits. And so at that point, I think last year, the board spent $750.
That's fine.
Any additional discussion? Okay, we'll call for the vote. Director DeSalvo.
Yes.
Director Gosa.
Yes.
Director Potts.
Yes.
Director Beck.
Yes.
Director Mayfield.
Yes.
Director Hayes.
Yes.
My vote is yes. Motion carries. Thank you. I have a motion regarding approval of the bid for the J.B. Young parking lot.
Mr. President,
Director Hayes.
I move that the board approve the lowest responsive bid for $186,534 for Emery Construction for the J.B. Young additional parking project.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Director Beck?
It's my understanding that this is going to cost more than initially described because of the weather, and construction companies are behind. I'm trying to figure out how that works.
That is one factor I have listed there. The bulk of the cost comes from things we added to the project. We're repairing several spots in the northern parts that aren't related to where we're adding the actual parking, just to repair the whole parking lot, seal and striping the whole thing, and adding some signage that we didn't initially plan on doing, but when we got to looking into the project and really going through the planning process, it seemed like a good idea to add it at that time.
So if we were to, sorry, I remember also the initial time we talked about this, it was just adding a little bit of parking. Was it always both south and east that we were talking about?
Yes, we initially, when we brought the project idea to the board, we had two layouts, and it seemed like the consensus of the board, it was just a discussion item, that we should proceed with doing both pieces of the work.
Okay, and then that included adding handicap parking out front, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Any additional discussion?
Yes.
Director Mayfield?
Is it requiring you taking out some playground equipment?
We are removing the playground equipment on the south side for this project.
The reason that I asked that because we 2.5 years ago installed a lot of that.
Clyde, you have to talk into the mic.
Okay. 2.5 years ago, we installed a lot of the playground equipment, and to take it out now is going to, I say, is just a waste. I don't know if we utilize all of the ground that we've already, the field that we had out there. And we can't do anything with that. It's very decorative. The stone garden, or whatever you want to call it. But that can't be utilized in a better way. Providing more space.
We could look at that, but the way it's done right now, we'd have to do substantial deconstruction of what's there. We'll go back to the playground. The playground is a little older than 2.5 years. The company that makes that equipment doesn't make the equipment anymore, and so we can't get replacement parts, and it's in disrepair right now. And we cannot get new parts for it.
So will there be installation of another playground?
I think perhaps Director Mayfield, you're talking about the pre-K playground area. That's going to be relocated with the pre-K over to Madison. The old playground equipment on the south side is much older than 2.5 years, and all of that will be removed in order to add parking. But the newer stuff that you're talking about will be relocated over to Madison.
So there will not be a playground there?
There will not be a playground for pre-K on the north side because we will no longer have pre-K.
Okay. So that's something developed I'm not aware of, but we weren't going to have it. Thank you.
Did you have more, Director Mayfield?
What's that?
Did you have anything more?
No.
Okay, thank you. Director Gosa?
I had a couple questions on this. I did not see a matrix on this like we had put into that policy where we would get the MRI rating and what were the other things, because the contractor you guys are recommending, I know, had a couple of prevailing wage violations in Illinois and an OSHA violation. So I'm just kind of curious on how you guys determine they're responsible without using the matrix or showing us the matrix between the contractors, like we had specifically put in that policy so that that would help us with this stuff. And I know this is after that policy went into effect. I'm gonna recommend not voting on this tonight so you guys can get us that stuff, but I just was curious.
Okay, we didn't put together a matrix for that project. We went on the recommendation to award to this bidder on basis of the engineer's recommendation, which we included that letter.
Right, I saw that.
Yeah, so that's what we used on this one.
I mean, I totally get that. A guy throws me a little bit of money, I'm gonna recommend him too. I'm not saying that happened at all, but I mean that's a possibility. But so I'm gonna recommend that we take this off until you guys can get that stuff for us. So that way we can determine the responsibility of the bidder. That was the whole point of us putting together that, so we would have a better understanding on this stuff. That was what I had.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Any additional discussion? I don't recall the policy offhand. I don't know, Director Beck, if you do, whether there was a threshold before you apply the matrix or what the requirements were.
No, it would have applied to this because it was any project that we have to approve. I don't believe there was a minimum, what is it, $50,000 or more we have to approve. So I think it would have applied.
Okay, thank you. Is there any additional discussion? You look confused, Director Gossa. How can I help you?
What I need to do to make a motion to pull this off.
There are a couple of ways. One is that it could be voted down. Another is that you could ask, or not ask, but you could make a motion that this be
A motion to postpone.
postponed indefinitely.
Indefinitely or to a specific date.
Indefinitely is a lot easier.
I can do it now?
Yes.
I would like to make a motion to postpone this item indefinitely.
Okay, thank you. Is there a second to the motion to postpone indefinitely?
Second.
Is there any discussion? I have a question. Is there any sense of urgency? So if the board votes to postpone indefinitely, then this will set this vote off for some time. Is there a sense of urgency to this?
Well, any delay to the start of the project will delay the completion of the project.
Right.
There are, at times, we do have a parking shortage at the building. And so we move this up to get the parking here. And if we delay the start of the project, we'll delay the completion, and that shortage will continue.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Any other discussion? We're discussing only the motion to postpone indefinitely. So, Director Gossa,
Yes.
Director Beck,
Yes.
Director Hayes,
Yes.
Director DeSalvo,
Yes.
Director Potts,
No.
Director Mayfield.
Yes.
My vote is yes. Motion carries. And this motion, which is 8.06, the approval of the bid for the J.B. Young parking lot, has been postponed indefinitely, and it'll be taken up by the agenda committee to decide when to bring it back. May I have a motion regarding approval of the purchase offer for the former Lincoln School property?
Mr. President,
Director Hayes.
I move the board accept the purchase offer from Together Building a Better Community in the amount of $30,000 for the former Lincoln School property and authorize the board president and secretary to take the actions necessary to execute any needed documents to close the sale.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Director DeSalvo.
I'm really struggling with this offer because we had offers that we heard earlier that were significantly more for the value of this building. The building has been for sale for some time, but I feel an obligation to the taxpayers in our city to do the very best that we can in getting the most that we can out of the value of our properties. I feel that every offer that we had on the table, everyone had very good intentions and ideas, and I would support all of their efforts in doing that. But at this time, I cannot approve an offer of $30,000 on a building that's a value much greater than that.
Any other discussion? Director Gosa.
I will say, so I participated by phone for quite a few of these. Every organization had great things that they wanted to do for the community, right? Yes, it is less. I would take $1 for a building if it's going to help the community out and give them what they need. I mean, at the end of the day, that's what it has to be, what best needs and meets the most needs of the community in the surrounding area, especially down in that area. So I'm going to support this, but I'm one of 7 people. I mean, so I thought they had a very good presentation, very knowledgeable, were set with what they wanted to do and how they were going to impact the community. So that's where I'm at.
Director Hayes.
It is a much lower offer than one that we had received in the past. However, money doesn't fix everything. There's a lot of situations that we're dealing with in the community that's going on with the schools district. And, you know, even with some of our open forums, we see that the community comes forward to us to voice concerns about various issues that are going on. And I do feel that we need to give back to the community. We need to have more community engagement and show that we are listening and that we do care what happens. I am convinced that the building will be used for things that will assist the community. I'm not saying that, you know, some of the things that have been offered that are not a good idea. They are a great idea, but there's a group of people that, you know, our constituents, we need to sometimes listen to what's being said in that arena and do things that's going to build community morale.
Thank you. Is there any additional discussion? Director Beck.
I just want to say this has been one of the toughest things I've had to think about as a school board member in my short tenure. All of the entities have great ideas and great things that they want to do with this building. Really, what it came down to for me was the education mission of the district and keeping as much with that as possible and helping the students who are in our district. And so, again, it was a tough decision, but in this case, money was not the overriding factor.
Any additional discussion?
Mr. President?
Oh, Director Potts.
Yeah, I agree with Director DeSalvo's assessment of the situation. I don't believe we're in a position financially to be philanthropic. I do think all the people that wanted to purchase the building had good ideas. I think all things then being equal, we need to get the greatest return on our district's investment in the property from whomever will pay us the most money for the property. I also believe that veterans are part of our community, homeless veterans are part of our community, and anything we can do to assist those who have served our country, we should be very much fully engaged in assisting them. In addition to which, it puts the property back on the tax rolls.
Thank you, Director Mayfield.
I know we're contemplating whether we should sell the building at a lower price. But there's one reason why I think it's important that we do that. Because there's somebody that wants to work with the community, with the neighborhood, with our young people. I mean, that is so important. When we close schools, we devastate the areas around it. And we've taken away a lot from what was below Locust Street when we're talking about schools. That affects the neighborhoods. That affects the opportunities that the kids have. Now we have an organization, whether it be a church, that wants to actually do something for those kids, that neighborhood. It's so important that we just don't look at the dollar amount, because those kids, that community, is going to be our future in these neighborhoods. I know we're talking about closing some other schools. At least that's what I've heard. You know, whether that be Smart, whether that be Sudlow, whether that be Wims. But I guarantee you, whatever schools that we close, it affects the neighborhood profoundly. We have a chance here to help those kids and have programs. You know, I hear a lot of complaints about what kids are not doing. And don't get me wrong, I do believe in what this other offer has for veterans. My father was a veteran, his brothers were veterans, my brothers were all veterans. I was not. But the point is, I do believe in helping veterans. But that neighborhood needs community involvement. And that's great if we can get more veterans places to live. But there's a lot of young people down in that neighborhood that we have an opportunity to do something for. And it's going to make a big difference to the school. When I say school, I'm talking about our high schools, our neighborhoods. Every single time that we close a school, it depresses that neighborhood even more. We've depressed it by closing that building up. But if that building can be used for our young people and services for people around there, I think that makes a big difference. And so my vote would be to sell it at the lower rate, not because of the money, but because of the good that it will do. We need to stop thinking just about the dollar and think about the good. Because that neighborhood, those kids are going to be going to our schools. And I won't get into it about what it's doing to our schools down here every time we close a facility. But there is an opportunity for us to make that building an asset for the community, not at our expense, the school systems. And it has been paid for once. I think the greater good is just basically letting the folks buy it that want to at the lower cost. And I think it'll pay dividends in the future. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Director DeSalvo.
Mr. Maloney, I see Dick Davidson is here as well. Can somebody tell me the current assessed value of the building?
I don't know the current assessed value, and we've had several conversations with the city assessor about they don't put a lot of effort into the assessment of public buildings that are not on the tax roll. So the city, what's shown in the county assessor's records doesn't reflect the value. Based on market comps at the time that we listed the property, we listed it at $721,000.
And our starting asking price was,
Our starting asking price was $721,000.
and when did we put it on the market?
About 2 years ago.
Okay, thank you.
Director Beck.
I did want to clarify that this money is PEPAL money and can only be used for construction projects, correct?
Yes.
It is not money that we could use to pay teachers or...
Exactly. These funds will be deposited to PEPAL and can only be used on PEPAL eligible expenses.
Okay.
Any other discussion? Well, I'm going to make a couple of comments. I think, as Director Beck said, this is an incredibly difficult decision. And it may seem obvious to people that, well, why wouldn't you just go for the most money? The board has spent significant time thinking about this. And in looking at what our community needs are, and as Director Mayfield was talking, the community needs are great. And Director DeSalvo just mentioned earlier that we're going to have a memorandum of understanding, and we'll probably have a resolution to support it at the next meeting that helps. It helps the city and the district work together in a better way. And we've talked about this for years and years. And some of you are aware of adages, and they say something like, well, where the school goes, there goes the city. And in a lot of smaller communities, especially in Iowa, we've had a lot of that. We've had a lot of things happen to small districts, small schools. Some of the schools have just gone into complete disrepair because they don't have enough students. But it really is important. And I think that making the decision between supporting veterans and kids, that's tough. And it really is. And every person on this board has to deal with that. Every person on this board has to make that decision about the fiscal realities and maybe responsibilities. Yeah, we got some tough things going on in our district. And how do those relate to something here where maybe we can make a difference in kids' lives? So it's just a very, very tough issue. I just wanted to reiterate that, but I won't say anything more about it. Is there any additional discussion? All right, I'm going to call for the vote. Director Hayes,
Abstain.
would you explain why you're abstaining, please?
I feel the need to abstain because I'm actually employed with the party that's interested in the purchase.
Okay, thank you. Director Beck,
Yes.
Director DeSalvo,
My vote is no.
Director Mayfield.
Yes.
Director Gosa.
Yes.
Director Potts.
No.
My vote is yes. Motion carries. Thank you. May I have a motion regarding approval of change order with Bi-State Masonry?
Mr. President,
Director Hayes.
I recommend the board approve the following policy 504.10, anti-bullying, anti-harassment policies.
You skipped.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, I ask that the board approve the change order with Bi-State Masonry in the amount of $72,117.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Director DeSalvo.
Why does this stuff keep falling apart at Central? It's just, it's an old building. We're on the third layer and we're crumbling into nothing. I couldn't believe the pictures. Mike's smiling at me because I always ask what tuck and roll or whatever they call it. Tuck pointing. This isn't tucking though, is it?
Excuse me?
Is this tuck work? Tuck and
Tuck pointing, yes.
tuck pointing.
Masonry repair, and this particular part of the building has several layers of masonry. You can't see the middle one until you remove the outer one. And when you remove the outer one and find the inner is deteriorated, when you're dealing with a building that's more than 100 years old, occasionally this is what you find is masonry that's deteriorated over the years that has to be repaired.
Do we have any other, I'm sorry, can I ask another question? Do we have any other areas that we should be looking at while we're doing this? Like,
Yes, the entire building has been examined, and we've in fact been looking at the masonry. We have an architect engaged who's looking at all of the masonry buildings in order to try to get out in front of this sort of thing.
okay.
There will always be circumstances, particularly with the older buildings that have multiple layers of brick that you can't see the inner ones till you remove the outer ones.
Okay.
Joe has been on a 3-year project of doing an assessment of all of the masonry buildings in order to better understand prior to bidding exactly this kind of thing, but we'll never be able to avoid this without doing destructive
Work.
inspections.
Sure.
Where we
Sure.
tear it apart in order to see what's in.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Any additional discussion? Okay, we'll call for the vote. Director Hayes.
Yes.
Director Gosa.
Yes.
Director Potts.
Yes.
Director Beck.
Yes.
Director DeSalvo.
Yes.
Director Mayfield.
Yes.
My vote is yes. Motion carries. Thank you. May I have a motion regarding approval of policies?
Mr. President,
Director DeSalvo.
I move that the board approve the policy committee's recommendation for the following policy: 504.10, anti-bullying, anti-harassment policy, students.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Director Beck.
I just wanted to point out that this is a policy that's mandated by the state. And we used templates, and we also had our legal team look at it. And so we are confident that this is an acceptable policy.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Okay, we'll call for the vote. Director DeSalvo,
Yes.
Director Gosa,
Yes.
Director Beck,
Yes.
Director Potts,
Yes.
Director Mayfield,
Yes.
Director Hayes.
Yes.
My vote is yes. Motion carries. Thank you. We have, looks like 3 discussion items. Looks like we're still in good shape time-wise. Why don't we go ahead and at least get through what we can. First is 9.01 Phase 2 update. Do you have somebody? Okay.
So, sitting in front of you is a document that we had previously discussed. Associate Superintendent Schnaden had created a document that we were using internally, and the document that sits before you is the document that's going to go before the State Board of Education August 1st. And so I want to give you guys some time, a couple minutes to kind of read through it, maybe ask any other questions that you might have, and then I can kind of describe what we've been doing between the middle of June to now. And Associate Superintendent Schnaden, please feel free to jump in wherever necessary. So let's just take a couple minutes of board time here to read that, Ralph.
I put it back on by your desk. I put it back on the table. No, I didn't have any. You didn't give me anything, so I thought you... Huh? Yeah, I never saw it until we...
Yeah, over the phone.
We just took care of one of them, bullying harassment policy. Check.
Boom.
Yeah.
Make a celebration.
We can check that one off.
Yes.
You're taking your time. I'm seeing signs of people wrapping it up. Before we
Should have done restroom. Restroom.
Oh, good run.
want to wait.
So,
he was one of the groups.
All right, I was hoping that our other board member would be back by now. We'll go ahead and start the discussion then.
Well,
Go ahead.
so before we talk about that, I'd like to briefly discuss, at the end of June, we began discussions with our state to begin onboarding our new mentors that are going to be mentors / experts that are going to be assigned to our district. And at the end of June, Dr. Tom Lane has since joined our team. He came up and spent a couple days with us. He's familiarizing himself with the community. He's going to be a part of a discussion that we have on community engagement in a little bit. But I just want to give a little background. Dr. Tom Lane is a retired superintendent, and he retired again for the second time, I do believe, as the chief of all the AEAs in the state of Iowa. And so he comes to us with a lot of experience. He is assigned as the board mentor and the superintendent's mentor. And so as you can see, that looks like sitting next to Dr. Kolbilski looks like it's off to a good start. Dr. Lane is also responsible for implementing our community engagement and community involvement plan, which we started with him internally, and those conversations spilled over with Dr. Kolbilski shortly after that. We have established our administrative structure and reporting structure, and with Marquay Winston and Sandy, we talked about the report card structure and what that looks like, and how that's going to kind of begin to flush out inside of our district. And through those conversations, we talked about an internal communication plan that we piloted at the end of last year with our district special ed delivery plan to try and incorporate as much communication with all of our stakeholders as possible. So, Dr. Tom Lane, thank you so much for being a part of our team. Again, this document that I have in front of you, this is what's going to be presented August 8th. And it's a 30,000-foot view of what's been going on inside of our district. I'd like to talk about the color coding system specifically first. If you look at yellow means we're working on it, and green means good to go. Check it off the box. And if this is Amy Williamson's and the State Department's document, so if that's checked off, it means it's completed. Red means not started yet. And you'll notice that this document for August 1st is not the complete list of citations, because Amy and her team thought it best that we tackle the most immediate needs first, while still keeping those windows, so to speak, open in the background and continuing to work on those. The conversations that I've had with Amy, are truly about how do we check these boxes off? How do we show that we are being compliant? And the two ways that we discussed that today are using our internal mentors to kind of vet, to share that information back. But the other piece that we discussed today was in our school system, we have a way of uploading information in a way for the Department of Ed to check it, and it's through our CASA system. And so what they're going to do is they're going to work on implementing a way for us to upload our evaluation time schedule. which you'll see is one of those things that we have completed under Associate Superintendent Schnaden's guidance and HR. And from there, they will review that, give us feedback through the CASA system. And then once they check off that we have completed that and that's sufficient, they will mark that completed, and we will have a more efficient way to mark our status. And that will be by using artifacts and through communication between the department and Department of Ed and our central office administration and school board. I would like to applaud the school board for taking a very necessary step of approving your policy tonight, which is one of our citations that we would then be able to turn green. We would upload that into CASA. They would say, nice work. And Dr. Tom Lane would urge us to shout it from the hilltops that we're beginning to chip away at our phase 2. So the document that you see before you, the first 3 items, they are they are evaluation, and they were first. Now today, we could have marked these complete because I shared many of the documents with Amy Williamson in a phone conversation, but we decided to utilize CASA, and from there, allow that to be our official way to upload our documentation, because we were sharing it, kind of like via Skype, so to speak, and she was reviewing it and stating that this was appropriate. And so as we work together through this together, I find that CASA document, the CASA is very familiar to our buildings. It's very familiar to our central office. It's very familiar to our directors. It's a little cumbersome sometimes, but I think it's the best way to upload documents. That way, we're not sending it to person A when it should have been sent to person B. On their end, they will assign somebody to review those documents and ensure that we are headed in the right path. So in the first 3 documents, there's quite a few pieces of evidence that have been collected in there, and you can see the notes that are going to be reported to the State Board of Education. Associate Superintendent Dr. Goldstone and her team have met every week to ensure that we are moving forward with these items. An example of that, we were required to review all the files in our HR department and then determine who needs an evaluation, who doesn't have an individual career development plan inside of their personnel file. Well, we decided to update all the personnel files immediately and not wait. So Dr. Goldstone, she put together a communication plan that went out to all the buildings, and Associate Superintendent Schnaden ensured that happened. And we wanted to do that before our building administrators left and before our teachers left, because what we found is that we weren't housing those individual career development plans in the right place. They were keeping it at the buildings and not in their personnel files. And we did find places where they were missing, obviously. I can share some of those facts with you too, if you like. So those are the first 3. Do you guys have any questions on those first 3? They're all kind of self-explanatory. And if you have any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer them now.
This is just kind of a general, not very specific to these 3, but so Amy has approved them, then she has to go in front of the Board of Education, and then they ultimately have to approve this, correct? Okay, thank you.
It's just status update, very
Right,
similar to what we're doing
right.
here. Yeah. Yes, sir.
So, you know that I always get concerned when we get a document like this that we're told we have to comply with, and it isn't clear to me. I mean, I put down here in the yellow, I put in green with a question mark, because it sounds like what you said is that we've done the work, but we haven't been credited with doing the work. And so, as Director DeSalvo just pointed out, we may not be credited with that until, say, September. And so, at what point, because we've asked before, what does August mean? And I don't think there's been a clear definition of that. August for me is coming up in a few days, and my interpretation is that we'll still be yellow for some time into the future on these 3. and I know it'll apply to other things, but is that right?
My interpretation of these is it's the end of August. And this, when we update these, someone on their end in CASA will get it and they'll give us immediate feedback. And once they get it, once they get the, say for example, the schedule for evaluating teachers, which was requested, establish a written evaluation criteria and annual implement evaluation procedures. We had those, we just weren't able. So now we're going to be able to produce them. We'll upload them to CASA, and from there we will get feedback, or it will be clicked that section of teacher evaluation is completed. So it will be turned green when we upload it.
So I think it's unfortunate that the president and the superintendent would have two different interpretations of what August means. Is there any way that we could get a definition from somebody on what August means? And I'd really like to have something from the state if I could, because I'm very, very uneasy. And after the last phase one that we went through, I think that I expressed my uneasiness frequently. And then even with that, I don't know that that was sufficient. So, because what's going to happen, I believe, is that if we don't comply with any of these, or we don't meet the date, then it will be the responsibility of the board for having not met that. That's my interpretation. So I'm just asking, you would think that somebody should be able to define what August means.
Well, at our last board meeting, Sandy said that August means the end of August, and I believe that was clarified in our negotiations. So Sandy's raising her thumb, Corey was there. It's the end of August. So the last day of August is that time frame. And it was clarified at the negotiations meeting. It was clarified at the last board meeting, and it's the end of August.
I just like things written. All I'm saying is that there was another comment, I believe, that said that the State Board of Education can overrule the Department of Education on any of these. I don't understand why it's so. If I go ahead and write a statement and say the end of August means the end of August, and I can send it to the state and ask them to verify it, it just shouldn't be that big a deal. But anyway, that's my concern here, is that I don't understand when we'll really know, because it sounds like we have to it goes into CASA, somebody there, and we don't know who, will then eventually get back.
Because each one of these citations might have a different expert attached to it. Example, the one that's complete, that Corey Guy, Director of Curriculum Instruction, completed was the accessible materials. She emailed separately Holly Barnes, who happens to be in charge of that section, and gave it a thumbs up. And so what we finalized this past week and this week was that we would utilize CASA to do that, because both sides need to be able to talk with one another and really funnel that information. And I believe that this will be a great way to streamline that information. So, anybody else have any other questions in the first three?
I just think it's also a big help if we get things to them that they're providing feedback. So they're saying, hey, you're on track, or no, go back and fix this or change this. So I think that allows for a good opportunity to get pretty much real-time updates of where we're at. So even if it's not by the due date, but in advance, this is where we're headed. Are we in the right direction? So I think it's very helpful.
So let's go to the second set of, let's just go 4 through 8. I see a screen full here. Do you guys have any questions on Dr. Beck?
Did you say 4 through 8?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Number 7, the Equal Employment Opportunity and Affirmative Action Plan. The date says January 31st. Is that 2020? There's no year.
What's that?
There's no year.
Yeah, that's 2020.
Okay. So I guess that's actually not that long from now, but we haven't started that yet. Is this the kind of thing that we can essentially use templates to make? We don't have to worry about a time crunch. It's
The reason why that was bumped back and not, because it was originally August.
Yeah.
And the reason why that was bumped back because we wanted to see if there were any portions of that needed community input.
Okay.
And so, yes, there are templates. Yes, there are great examples of that out there. But the state board and the district thought, well, let's really, since this is one of our major areas, let's really ensure that we are doing our due diligence to make sure that we have the best policy out there. So that's why they bumped that back a little bit.
okay. Thank you.
Oh, Director Goza, I'm not used to being the
Usually the voice in the staff. I had a question about that one as well. So if we don't have anything in place for that right now, like all the people that just got hired tonight, I mean, is anything gonna come back that we didn't?
I believe that we had our portions up. Dr. Goldstone, if you would like to speak to this, you can. But anytime they found an irregularity, we were supposed to beef it up. But let's get the official answer from Dr. Goldstone.
What was your question?
So item number 7, the equal employment opportunity and the affirmative action. What I was asking was, since nothing's been started on this yet, because it's getting started later, are any of the hires that the board had approved earlier, any previous that, will anything come back that we didn't follow? This?
No, we still have our non-discrimination policy that's always in effect. And this just lengthens or deepens that policy. So no, we will not be out of compliance in any hires that we've made so far.
Okay. Yeah, I was just curious about that. I figured we had something, but obviously it wasn't what the state had expected. So I just wanted to make sure we weren't getting ourselves in trouble. That was what I had.
Dr. Beck?
So number 6 there, the teacher peer review, that's different from the essentially supervisor evaluation, right?
Yeah.
Don't teachers already essentially work together and observe each other? And
This is an official process that one of the great things about going through this is you find things that were just literally missing from your practice. Now, we had tried to institute this a couple of years ago, but ran into some hurdles. We are actually excited about implementing this, partnering with the union and doing it right. And so you can see that we have a year to get this done. And there's actually some teacher leadership members in the crowd right now. And this will be orchestrated by a good chunk of that. We also have professional learning communities going inside of our schools that will really facilitate this. So this is something I'm actually looking forward to getting in place. Is essentially where teachers review each other's professional development goals and plans.
But with the TLCs and the model teachers, and weren't we already doing a lot of this? Is this more of a formalization?
Correct. This is every teacher.
Okay.
And as we are looking at putting a plan together, we do have a cross-section of curriculum people, the union, classroom teachers as well, that will be helping us build the plan that we will put into operation.
I'm just, I guess every time I hear something like this, I'm thinking there's one more thing that we're asking our teachers to do. So part of my question was to find out, is this already something that's in practice? So we're not adding.
This must be.
We have not met the state expectation in what we're doing through the PLCs, through the collaborative teams, the CTTs, etc. This is a more formalized where teachers are going to have a shared focus within the building plan and being able to observe each other and learn from each other's practices.
Okay. Thank you.
So there's a lot of training in here and a lot of required documentation. And how are we going to keep track of these evaluations were done, this training was done, this individual still needs to take this, or how? To me, it sounds very complex, and how you're going to track that every one of our staff have met the necessary requirements.
It is going to be a daunting task, and that's why we do have a cross-section of experts that will come and will help us in that process. And that documentation piece is very important. Philosophically, we're going to use a Google document. Teachers will log in. They will list what their particular focus is, when they did the observation, etc. But it is a daunting task. I think we will do a very good job at it. I think we will build a very, very good program because of the expertise of collegial working together to build this plan.
I would just say too that I was in attendance that day, as many of us were, and the state was very much so in advocating how much they were willing to help us, and that they would provide experts, and that they're going to give us resources needed. And I know that you're all going to tune into that, and I know with Sandy's help and Tom's help that we will definitely reach out, because it sounds like they're just waiting in the wings, willing to help. And that's one message that I think was made very loud and clear that day, and I'm very grateful for that. And I think we should definitely take advantage of all of those resources that can help
I
us.
think this has a potential of helping teachers. And if teachers find it helpful, it doesn't end up being, this is one more thing I have to do. It will be, this is something that helps my practice. And I can learn from my colleague can learn from me. And so I think it moves us very far along in terms of that collaborative practice and implementation of best practices that many, many of our teachers already possess.
Thank you.
If we go, let's go down to, from item number 9 down, it will take us actually down to all of the ones that are needing immediate action, which will be down to 13. And if you have any additional questions about that, please feel free to ask, but that would then wrap up our presentation.
Dan has.
Director Goza.
Yeah, I'm not a doctor, but thank you.
I almost called you Dr. Goza.
My question is, with all the reviews and everything that need to get done, what is the chain of command to make sure that it is getting done? Who is responsible to make sure it gets done, and who is checking that person, and who is checking that person?
So that's what we worked through with Dr. Lane. And we vetted it with Dr. Kobilski, and Sandy's seen it. And this will be presented to you very shortly, because it's the very first thing we're going to say to all of our teachers. What we talked about with a communication plan with all of our administrators, that this is how this is going to roll, and this is how you're going to be communicated with. But the superintendent is in charge of the associate. So the superintendent oversees everything. So that's where the final buck stops. But the 2 associate superintendents oversee directors. And from there, there's different initiatives aligned, different things assigned. As you've heard, Dr. Goldstone's in charge of that. Well, that rolls up to an associate superintendent. And from there, those are constantly being checked. And that system's worked very well. With due dates that are being turned in, and the meetings that are scheduled, we meet weekly. And this is very similar to what I believe Dr. Kobilski says he currently operates on, but there's a district cabinet meeting that meets weekly, and we discuss these items. And then from there, there's department meetings that happen at central office that then help support and guide the work that needs to occur inside of our buildings. And so that work is like an accordion. And from there, there's a larger group that's called the District Student Achievement Team. And that group of people are constantly reviewing this document. That's their purpose. That's their goal. And so from there, we're always looking at what's next. What do we have to do? So the superintendent is in charge of that District Student Achievement Team. That meets once a week. The cabinet meeting of directors, that meets once a week. And from there, the associate superintendents have meetings regularly with the directors as well, to ensure that this work is happening. Because once it goes to the buildings, it's kind of like a ship that leaves the harbor. You have to put everything on that ship, and that ship leaves the harbor. From there, it's kind of out of the harbor. So that's what we're trying to build right now, to ensure that all of our ships are fully stocked before they leave the harbor. They have everything that they need. And what's going to be very important is how we hold ourselves accountable from the student all the way up to the superintendent. This is what we expect, and this is how we're going to inspect it. And then from there, who needs redirected. So that's kind of our motto for this different rollout of this plan.
So do you guys have like an agenda? This is what this cabinet meeting is going to have. Boom, boom, boom. This is what this meeting is going to have, and how long you think those meetings are going to last?
The meetings are an hour and a half to an hour every Monday, and then the larger meetings are 2 hours once a week. And we discuss all kinds of things in each one of those meetings, ever from minutia, things that need to be discussed and turned over quickly, to how's our phase 2 going.
Thank you.
Vice President?
On item number 10 and bullet point number 2, the end of it cut off, what is that last sentence under chosen?
On number 10, you said?
Yes.
And which one are you looking for?
Number 10, item number 2, the last sentence.
This was a substitute license.
It's greater content area, period. That's what it says.
Okay. Thank you.
Essentially, we have homeschool assistance people that needed to apply for a substitute's license. And since then, they have been told that they need to do that, or they will not be employed with us anymore.
Thank you.
Dr. Beck.
Going back to numbers 8 and 9, both of those are Title I parent information. Number 8 was providing parents on request and in a timely manner information regarding the professional qualifications of the students' classroom teachers. And then the number 9 was the same thing, except if the student has been taught or is assigned to somebody who's not meeting the state licensure, right? So my first question is, why is this specific to Title I parents? Because it seems like the kind of thing that's important for all parents. Okay. But isn't this something that we should be providing to all parents upon request? Shouldn't we go above and beyond?
We could.
Okay.
But this is what's required of us.
Okay.
So the first one is we have a good system for sending that information out to parents.
Right.
The second one is if your teacher goes on maternity or paternity leave and you have a long-term sub there, then you need to let the parents know that if that's a high school teacher.
Right. Right. And I understand that, and that makes sense. And thank you for explaining I guess I would assume we do all we can to avoid having somebody, I guess substitutes are hard to come by. I don't know why. The way it's written, it seems like, why would you have somebody who's not certified in a particular place, teaching there? But I understand now what you mean. It's not that they're not certified as a teacher. It's that they might be teaching 3rd grade, but they're certified in middle school or something like that. Okay. But again, I would say it's not hard to provide it to all parents. It seems like the kind of information that all parents should have access to. And if it's provide upon request and we have to have it for the Title I parents, we should just give it to anybody who asks. Any parent who asks. So, above and beyond. That's it.
Any further questions on anything you see on this document? President Johansson.
Yeah, thank you. A couple things. So, I'm sorry.
No, your neck has a hard time turning this direction. This equal opportunity or equal employment opportunity and affirmative action. It says later due date. Is that actually being, I know we have something prior to, I'm not quite sure what it is, or how successful that we've been. But do you have another plan? Are you waiting to create, because we haven't been successful so far as recruitment in certain areas of affirmative action?
We have an entire team dedicated to the recruitment and retaining our minority teachers. It's one of our most difficult tasks, to be honest with you. We hired the only, Dr. Goldstone, only African American candidate from the UNI Education Department, and we are traveling all across the country. We're taking employees. Obviously, it's not good enough. We need to do better. And so, Dr. Goldstone and Jabari Woods lead up the recruitment efforts inside of our district. We are looking at some other ways to recruit, to kind of grow our own administrators, and we're working with Ryan Sadler to do that. I'm very excited about that opportunity. And so, yes, we have a long way to go, and it was mentioned earlier by one of our parents that we have a long way to go in that area.
I agree with you. I've been here a while. I've experienced, for instance, an example, one young man that was a teacher here, went to Illinois, became a principal, came back here, and we're talking about JV, and that young man was denied. I don't know the details as to why, but he was an excellent teacher, and it was a great opportunity to have hired someone of color. And when I inquired about it, it was said that the person that was hired was a PhD to be assistant principal. My problem with that is that here was a young man that the kids identified with. Now, I don't care if they have a PhD or whatever it is, if you're not identifying the kids or not identifying with you, that was a missed opportunity. And we knew that this young man did very well with young people. And so sometimes we miss the opportunity and it's right in our face for whatever reason. You know, the PhD was more important than the relationship that this young man could develop with these students that were there. And I think sometimes we are blinded by what we see and what we don't see and what we're looking for. So I would love to see the plan. It's just not a matter of recruiting, it's a matter of how they're treated while they're here. Because we've had a lot of people of color and they didn't stay. So just something to think about.
Appreciate the feedback.
I want to go back to especially number 9, maybe number 8. So number 8 in the due date, it says August 2019, prior to the beginning of the school year. So, and part of the reason I'm being picky is I think that the state is being very picky, and they will, if we don't make it, then we won't make it. There is no, if you get there by September, that's okay, right? The way you understand it?
I'm not going to fail at that.
It's
Nobody
okay.
in this room is going to fail.
It's okay, but I'm saying that if I'm responsible and I'm asking for these updates, and it says prior to the beginning of the year, and the notification is that it's immediate, and I understand we say we won't fail, But this is it's kind of a course cut at like a Gantt chart in describing due dates. On the next one, it says by September 2019. It says we haven't started yet. And when I look at this, I go, there's probably a process that has to be developed, that has to be implemented. Somebody has to know what they're doing here. And I just don't.
So these are very simple processes that can be done in an automatic fashion in HR. And so I did not want those to be marked completed, even though we have the process for them, until we uploaded the files into CASA. And so HR already has a process for now. It's almost never that our students, as a matter of fact, I think it is never, because we can't even start the year with a substitute teacher in the state of Iowa. So these two are new qualifications through ESSA, and literally we are very efficient at sending out emails to class lists that are inside of a school building and identifying those students. So we have this process. I did not want those to be marked completed until they had viewed all of the documentation, or they had viewed the plan inside of CASA after establishing that today. So when you see these items that are in working, many of them are completed, but I did not want that to be marked completed on here until they had seen the documentation, the process for whatever it might be. So I understand and I totally understand why you're frustrated about, well, why aren't we knocking that out if it's a simple process? Well, a lot of that stuff is already done. It's ready to be uploaded. We are going to be working with Tom and Diana to ensure that those can be reported out on August 1st. And so in those two areas, I am over the top confident that we are going to have those two accomplished. Those are simple processes that our HR department can handle.
Could we just describe all of these? Because you wanted to kind of put them all together. Can we just say that they're all simple? And
no, they are not all simple.
Oh. So I don't know how we would know.
The ones with later dates are, and in terms of PBIS and early literacy and those types of things, are not simple. That's why they're marked down farther. We as you can see in there, they're in negotiations with our new mentors in the areas of PBIS and our mentors in the areas of MTSS, which is multi-tiered system of supports for students. How do we instruct students, tag students, all the way down to our special ed students on the continuum.
I'll just ask one other specific question then in item 14. So it says that the DDSDP is on track to be revised by September 2019. The IEP reviews are being conducted with Sandy's help, and it requires that be, the number one will be completed by September. Item 2 has an odd specific date of May 9th, for whatever reason that is, of 2020. But number 1, when it says we're on track to be revised, so what's that mean relative to this whole plan?
So the district's special ed delivery plan is what we reported out on earlier, how we ran that through our communication tool, where every building held building meetings. We posted a feedback link on the website. Our principals shared a video of what the new delivery service plan was, and our teachers and community people can participate in that, and it happened on the same day all across the district. And then for those families that couldn't make it, we put that plan on the website for them to review and give feedback, and the feedback was fed in. From there, that plan went back to our district student achievement team that I was referencing to Director Goza before, And it was revised, and it's currently waiting for approval at state level. And we will be able to check it off. And the person that is reviewing that state is, I think, is doing it right now. So that is well on track. The rest of what you see here, our next area of special education concerns are early childhood. That's what ECSE means. And so the way that we were providing our early childhood services were inappropriate. And so we're going about following our district special ed delivery plan and ensuring that we are providing FAPE for all of our early childhood students.
So just something that would help me sleep better at night is if we use this document or something like it. But when you say we've already completed it, it's at the state, that helps me a lot because it makes me understand that you've already completed it. We're waiting on them.
That's good feedback.
Because right now, I feel like we're waiting on me to get all this done. And that feels really bad. So
That's good feedback. And I can
all right,
work
thank you.
that way.
That's all I got.
That concludes my phase 2 report.
All right.
Unless you have something to add, Associate Superintendent Stain?
Okay, very good. Thank you very much. Our next discussion item is community engagement. Normally, and Tom, I hope you'll forgive us, we normally take a 5 or 6 minute break after 2 hours for everybody's benefit. So we'll take a few minute break. We'll take a few minute break. This is a recess, and we'll reconvene about 8:30. Thank you. All right, we'll go ahead and reconvene the meeting. And our next discussion item is community engagement. This is going to be led by Tom Lane. He's a mentor for the board and the administration. This is a really important subject, and it's one that we've got to do a better job on. And Tom's going to make sure we get there. So, Tom, you is standing at the podium okay, or? Okay, all right, thank you.
Well, thank you. I turned my podium purposely this way because I want to speak to you folks as much as I do to the board. I'm delighted to be here. This is important work, and I'm just delighted to be part of the process. Before I go any further, I want to introduce my colleague, Diana Whited, as a former HR director that I've worked with extensively, and I think she's going to work with Bill and the HR team here. And I believe to answer some of the questions about equal employment opportunity, I think those are some quick wins for us. We will engage your community in some planning work, and that's something we can get done, I think, much more quickly than come January of 2020. So that's just an example of things that we think there's some quick wins here, and it'll be our task to share those. I'm a lifelong Iowan. I know it's hard for many of you to believe this by how youthful I look, but this is my 47th year in education. And I've done just about everything in school districts. I've been a teacher, I've been a school counselor, I've been an at-risk coordinator, I've been a special ed director, I've been an elementary principal, a secondary principal, and finished my career as a superintendent in a suburb of the Des Moines area. I retired in 2013, knew I wasn't done working in education, so looked for other opportunities, and the AEAs recruited, the area education agencies recruited me to work as a consultant and a lobbyist for them at the Capitol. And I learned a lot of things at the Capitol, good and bad, but it was good work. The last 18 months I have served as the executive director of the area education agencies and just finished that job on June 28th. About 2 months ago, the Department of Education approached me about doing some work here in your school district. And I was sharing with Diane on our way over here today, prior to about 18 months ago, I think I'd been to Davenport one time in my life. I was born and raised in Jefferson, Iowa, about 60 miles north and west of Des Moines, and a lifelong Iowan, but I hadn't been to Davenport. As I just said, I've been to Davenport now about 10 times in the last 18 months for various reasons, and I enjoy it here, so I'm looking forward to this work. Everybody I've met, from board members to administrators to staff, everybody's been just very welcoming and great, I'm planning on being here at least one day a week, and it typically the weeks that this board meets, I will come on board days. I'll get here about noon, and I'll have activities planned throughout the day, and then join you all for your board meeting that night to give a report or to answer any questions you might have, or for me just to learn from what you're working on. One of the big things that I've always found very helpful for my practice, and I wish we had more folks here yet. I did speak with some of them before they left, but community engagement to me has always been a successful cornerstone of my practice. I think it's what good school districts cultivate, and I think this district's probably no different. I will tell you right now, I've already reached out to people like Liz Tallman and some others with your economic development group, coming here and talking to the business community about how they can partner with us in reinvigorating, is the term I'm going to use, the Davenport School District. I wasn't here 6 months ago. I wasn't here a year ago. I wasn't here 2 months ago. I really try not to dwell on the past. I want to understand what our charge is as a board, as an administrative group, and Diana's in my charge, and we want to help you get there. So here are the things very simplistically. I want to respect our time, but it's absolute time that the school board, the administration, this community owned that we have some challenges ahead of us. We need to own that. The second thing we need to do, and this board and administration is in the process of doing, we need to build a plan. And now this goes not only with the work you've heard them talk about tonight, but also with our communications plan. So we need to build a plan, and we've talked about some different options there. The need for communications director or communications support, and we're talked today earlier this afternoon about what that might look like. I've already reached out to the current president of the Iowa Public Relations Administration Group, and she has pledged their support to this group. However, we need that with some interim support or simply just resources, and she sent me some of those today. Right here in Davenport, we've got Whitney, who's the communications director at Mississippi Bend AEA, who's a great friend of mine, and Whitney has offered that it would take a call from TJ right now to Bill Decker, and we can access supports with communications from the AEA, whether it's printed materials, whether it's how to set up meetings, things like that, we can do that. So we need, once we make a plan, we need to implement that plan. And finally, we need to have a way of celebrating and sharing our successes. You've got a nice Facebook page. You've got a good website. I know TJ says there's some work that needs to go into that, and all of us have to update our web pages from time to time, mainly to be compliant. Those are things that we need to get started on right away. I will be at that state board meeting on August 1st. I will be delighted to share stories of success that I've heard already, to the commitment that I've heard from this board and from the administrative leadership. I think they're going to be happy with many of the things that they hear from us on August 1st. I don't think we're going to get a hug or a great big pat on the back yet, but I think we're going to start wading our way through a lot of these things. I was sharing with somebody here a little bit ago, I don't know if this is a good thing or a bad thing, but it's a rare day where I don't have an interaction with somebody at the Department of Education. So I think I can get you great access to whoever we need to talk with. I was appreciative, I think it was you, Director DeSalvo, who said that they've pledged to give you the support that you need. I'll push them on that. I'll remind them of that as I have to, and I'll make sure that you have the supports that you need. To a question that I think Director Johansson asked, if we can show that we're making great progress and showing integrity in the work that we're doing towards things, and we miss something by 2 days, that's not going to be a big deal. Trust me, it will not be a big deal. I'm going to be your advocate. I'm going to work with you to make sure we're accountable and making progress, but I'm going to be the advocate for this district. I'm excited about these opportunities. I handed out a couple business cards earlier, and I've got more I'd be happy to hand out to any of you folks. I relish opportunities to talk to community groups, your PTOs, your booster clubs. If I can come and listen to folks and have a deeper understanding of your views of this district and how I can convey that to these folks and help you be better here, that's what I'm about. I was blessed in my educational career. I was just blessed. I finished my career at a district that was just absolutely impressive. and I was proud to be there every single day. It was hard for me to retire. I liked and a lot of people don't feel that way. It was hard for me to retire because I enjoyed that work, and I was so proud of the people that worked there and what we did for kids. But I've taken that passion, and I believe I still have contributions to make. And it's maybe not to one school district or one group of kids. My contributions now have to be on the state level. And if I can come here to Eastern Iowa and work with you good folks and the people who all work here, I'm all in. I want to do that work. So what I wanted to share with you is that we had a conversation this afternoon. Director Hayes, Director Johansson, a couple of your administrators, Bill and TJ and Diane and I, and we're going to dig right in right away now. We threw out some ideas about things we're going to do. They've got some steps they've got to decide what they might want to do with communication support. I'll reach out to my colleagues who said they've pledged some support going forward, and we're going to get started right away. By next week, Diana will be here meeting with Bill and some of the HR folks, getting some things ironed out there that we can report a success right away to the DE and the state board on August 1st. I will have been in town. I'll have met with some of your business leaders. I'll have met with Bill, Bill and TJ and Rob and some others probably. So we're excited. We're going to dig in. I'm going to be here every single week for as long as I'm of value to you folks. And like I said, I see some great things ahead for us, and I thank you basically for this opportunity. So with that, I would answer any questions from you folks or from anybody.
Well, we are just as excited to have you here, and Diane, both of you, that I think that we have a mound of work ahead of us, but I've never been so impressed with our administration as I was when I was with them at that meeting in June with the Phase 2, and they stepped up. They were well prepared, and I firmly believe, and I just told you this at the break, that we're on the way up. And we have nowhere to go but to be better, and we are going to be better. And can't thank you enough for your support and for being here. I know it's difficult to go back and forth from Des Moines. I make that trip quite a bit myself, and it's hard, but we're so grateful. So I'm really looking forward to the opportunity, and can't wait to get started. Thank you.
Excuse me. Tom, why don't you just call on us? Go ahead and direct
Okay.
this portion of it,
I'll
because
be glad to do
yeah.
that. I want to just give one response, then I'll come to you, Director Beck. This isn't the first time I've done this. 3 years ago, totally different circumstance and a totally different size. It was one of our smaller rural Iowa school districts, and you were talking, I think, Director Johansson, about how difficult it can be for them, and it was a district that was, and I won't detail all the turmoil, but they had turmoil in some areas that you don't even have to worry about. And they were on the verge of imploding and not being in existence. That community wrapped their arms around me, and they wrapped their arms around the school board, and they wrapped their arms around the kids, the people who worked in that district. And we implemented a lot of things that has allowed that district today to have a good solvency ratio, to have better student achievement. They won the state softball title last year in their class, and they won their first round game today. So they're excited, but it's a small town that's taken on increased pride in their local district. We need to do that on a bigger scale. We need to do that here in Davenport so that every child here feels valued, so that teachers are proud of where they work. You people are proud of this district that you serve, and I know you are already. But we need to build a cohesive community school community unit here, and we can do that. Director Beck?
So I was just going to ask, sort of as a regular old boring board member, what can I expect? Like, are you going to be calling meetings? Are you just going to be offering sessions that we can pop into? How does this relationship work?
Yeah, I'm going to do whatever you direct me to do. I need to understand your town better. I want to talk to some of your patrons. Here, once school started, I will probably speak with some teachers. I'm not going to surprise you. One of the things that I did in my own practice, and I did where this other school district that I went to, I held lunch with the superintendent. and I would invite maybe a dozen students in to we'd share 3 Casey's pizzas and some bottles of water. I learned so much from students. And you know what? It built so much goodwill with parents. And so I will, I'm not saying I'm going to do that here, but those are the things I do. I will embed myself in your community, try to learn about it. I won't surprise you with anything. You'll know what I'm doing, when I'm doing, and I will kind of be at your beck and call to do as you'd like.
So if we wanted to join you on one of your jaunts, I don't know,
I'd love
pizza or something like that,
Would
we could do
love.
that?
Like I
Awesome.
said, we've got to get back and kind of debrief, and we've got to talk with Bill about Diana's day next week, and I'll talk with TJ about next week, and we'll figure out what day makes the most sense. But you can depend on weeks when you have a board meeting. That's the day we'll be here.
Okay.
And we'll usually show up 10 to 11 to noonish. We'll schedule meetings during the day and then be here for you on
Okay.
board meetings.
I guess I'm just thinking, for me to listen to people firsthand, of course, if I can, is better than listening. Not that I don't trust your reports,
I
but
understand. No, I understand.
and so if I can, if it fits with my schedule, I would love to, hop in when I can.
Love to.
Okay.
I talked to one gentleman here earlier. He took my card and wanted to know if I talked to their school booster group or PTO, whatever you have here. Absolutely. So it would be an evening thing sometime, but I'd be glad to, and I'll let you know I'm doing it.
Okay.
Who else has a question or comment? Representative, or excuse me, Representative. I'm used to being at Capitol. Director Joanne.
It's okay. It's all right.
You need to run for office.
No, I don't. I think I've got a lot of other things to do. I want to thank you for being here.
You bet.
And, I had an occasion recently to spend quite a bit of time with Tom, and I think he's a fantastic person. And he's got the experience that when you sit down one-on-one with him, you'll understand that. And I think he can help us in so many ways. And there are ways that he'll help us prioritize this issue of community engagement. We end up, here it is, almost 3 hours after we started the meeting. And I think oftentimes about our meetings and what's important and why do we do this and that. And a lot of things come up, a lot of strong feelings like tonight, and what's important. But community engagement is something that I think that we as a district have tried, but it doesn't feel quite right. And I think that having this kind of expertise, and I think all of us on this board have different levels of expertise in certain things. And we could teach this district a thing or two if they wanted to know something specific about like argon or something like that, and but that wouldn't make sense. I just wanted to express my absolute and complete strong support for Tom and what he's doing. My thankfulness for you meeting with me and meeting with us, and my confidence that we'll get this thing straightened out. And community engagement, maybe there's some other areas too. So I just I hope for things like Director Beck that you asked, that we engage with him on a one-to-one level or whatever level we need to. He'll be setting up certain meetings, we'll be engaging in meetings, but I think he's completely available to whatever we need. So that's all I want. I don't have any specific questions.
I appreciate that.
Yep. Thank you.
Yes.
So do you have sort of a list of the types of people you want to meet with first, like parents at Title I schools or, business leaders or?
I would tell you all of that. I'm
Okay.
going to reach out, I wanted to come and meet with you folks first.
Right.
And I will now embark, like I said, I've reached out to Liz Tallman here at your local Chamber of Economic Development, whatever it's called here. But I've had extensive work with the Greater Des Moines Partnership in Des Moines. In fact, got the reference numbers for these folks from a friend of mine at the Greater Des Moines Partnership who's worked with these folks. So I'll reach out to them. I want to get to some of your booster club, PTO, your band, your music boosters, whomever. I want to speak with those people. I hope that there's people in this audience who will say, hey, we saw this new guy and he's available to us. And like I said, I brought extra business cards. I'm happy to go meet with any group you'd like me to. I would like to meet with your employee groups. I'm going to praise this lady right here. One of the things that I realized as a superintendent early on was that we had just as many of our staff were non-certified as were certified. For every teacher that we had working in the Carlisle School District, we had somebody who was feeding those kids or driving them to school or cleaning our hallways for us at night. We valued those people, and Diane understood that deeply. So that's a group that I want to talk with here. I shared with the group today, this afternoon, that if you're like where I worked before, you probably have a higher percentage of your non-certified staff who live and pay taxes here in Davenport than you do with your certified staff. They are also, if you look at the research, the greatest messengers about your school district are the people that are in non-certified positions. They're the ones that go out and message about the positive things about what's going on in your school building. So we need to engage that group and make sure they feel valued. And I'm not saying they don't, they probably do. But that's a group we need to consider and listen to as we try to build this school community. So those are things that I'll do.
Okay.
Is there anything else? Is Director Potts still on the line?
It looks like he is, yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
Director Potts, do you have anything?
I'm here. Yeah, no, I do not.
Okay.
I would like to meet with the gentleman at some time.
Absolutely, we
Okay,
will.
great, thank you. Director Gosa, were you ready to do something?
Sure.
Okay.
Like everyone else has said, I thank you for being here. I do think that community engagement is something that we do need to improve on a lot. A lot of people aren't out in the community. They don't know, what's going on. I probably put myself out there way too much in the community, volunteering all the time for everything, and I go to different communities all the time with my job. I see all kinds of aspects of life and struggles and all that. I guess one of the things I would like to know our roles and responsibilities. I've asked this
As a board member.
Yes.
Okay.
I've asked this because the way we were taught through the IASB training was not the way that the state board, when they were reaming us, the two didn't coincide with each other. So, had we had the juice that the state said we should have had, there probably would have been a lot of different things that happened. So I definitely would like clarity on that. I mean, obviously you've watched our meeting tonight. Sometimes I'll step on myself a little bit. I do like to ask a lot of questions and hold people accountable. That's what we pay people for. They should know the answers to our questions.
Sure.
And they should be getting our message out to the community. That's one thing that we're horrible at. We don't get our message out, what we're doing, any of the good stuff that goes in on our schools. It's always the bad stuff. That's all you ever see. Again, I think it's a great thing. I look forward to it. I might have to work with you over the phone because my job does require me to travel. I got my buddy Bill that comes every week with his hand out. So
Sure.
I got a wife and 4 kids that want that check.
And you coach baseball sometimes.
That I do.
Me too.
I do. It'll be football
Well,
season.
to your point, let me tell I should have mentioned this earlier. That's part of my charge here, is to work with your superintendent administration team, to work with your board, and to work on a community engagement plan. Those are my 3 big lifts. And to that point, I really enjoyed your conversation about rejoining IESP. And trust me, I understand why you dropped out. I was on the superintendent's advisory committee at ISB at the time when the whole thing fell apart. And nobody was harder on them than Tom Lane. I was very dissatisfied. Tom Downs, who was a very good friend of mine, he was the superintendent at Southeast Polk, and he took over the role as executive director at ISB, and he did the same thing here. I'm guessing Ralph, he did the same thing here that he did with me and my board at Carlisle. He personally came around and asked us to stick around and join. And I think you all said, you know what, we're not going to. We did by a 3-2 vote at my place. So you can tell that we had some consternation as well. I think they've reinvigorated themselves. They've done a nice job. You're joining the right groups. Margaret Buckton is a lifelong friend of mine. And Margaret is a great resource, whether you're with Rural School Advocates of Iowa or the UEN. I didn't know how she was going to do it, but that lady balances both of those two things very well at the Capitol. Lisa Bartuzik and her team at ISB are great. And they will help you with some of your compliance things that you're working on right now with board policy and such. So I've reached out to Harry Hilligenthal, who I think some of you know who Harry is, but he's a board development specialist with IASB. And he and I had Diana and he and I all had a conversation this morning about him becoming engaged with you and maybe doing some retraining, listening, and helping this board function in ways that you would prefer maybe to be able to function. So I don't know what that's going to look like. I've asked Harry, is that something that we need to start immediately? Is that something we need to wait for the November elections to start with that board if it's different than this one? But he and I are going to chat, I think, as soon as tomorrow again about perhaps Harry working with leadership here and of your board and how he might come over here and do some facilitative work with you.
Awesome. Perfect. Thank you.
Anybody else? If not, then thank you very much, Tom, for the presentation and the engagement. And we'll
I'll be
continue.
back here next week.
Okay.
Could I have a business card?
Oh, yeah.
Me too.
Yeah, let me just give each of you one.
Yes, I do. Thank you.
Oh, I don't have mine with me, but thanks.
All right.
Tom.
Okay, well, we're getting close to ending. This has been a little bit longer meeting than normal. But our next discussion item is policies. Director Beck, you want to lead that?
Yes, so the first three policies listed there, 502.15, drills for emergency, 305.22, use of security cameras, and 502.13, bomb threats. Those are policies that Mr. McKee revised. The drills for emergency, basically you had to change the language to meet oh no, that's what it was. So we have the emergency operation plan that we approved recently. And so I asked Bruce and Mike to go through and make sure that any policies that might refer to that were brought up to date and match with our emergency operations plan. So this is part of that, as is the bomb threats one, I believe. And then the security cameras one we've already seen and voted on. They just had to add in some extra language on school officials because the law changed on the definition of school officials. So I will let Bruce tell us about the drills for emergency and we'll do the bomb threats one as well if anybody has any questions.
Thank you. Director Beck is correct. I was asked to look at policies that are in place that correlate with the emergency operation plan that was put before the board last month for approval to make sure that they mesh, they mirror one another. So the changes that you're seeing in policies, whether it be the drill for emergencies or bomb threats, help mirror what is in our emergency operation plan and reflect each other equally.
And are there any questions? Discussion? No?
I have a question.
Go ahead.
On the first board policy, the drills policy, when we get down to the section that says during the academic school year, it is mandatory that the students complete evacuation drill to the designated primary evacuation site in September of each year. Am I correct in interpreting that, for example, at Central, there are 1,800 students have to do their evacuation prior to the last day of September?
That is correct. What we did was we reviewed what were best practices on this around the country with other school districts. What was happening district-wide is we were doing these drills as required by state law, but we weren't doing them till later in the year. Both myself and Andy and some other folks discussed this issue, thought it was important that our schools practice this drill right from the beginning. Realize that it's more complicated as the students get older and the buildings are larger, but it is a necessity. They need to know where their evacuation sites are. They need to know where to go, and we need to be prepared for any emergencies that would require full evacuation from our buildings to an evacuation site.
My other question then would be, and I don't know the answer to this, are all of the evacuation sites tied to our buildings within walking distance?
It's difficult for some of the buildings more so than others. By and large, yes, the buildings are in close proximity to one another. One of the things that I've done this summer, excuse me, is to review our evacuation sites and look to see where I could improve upon the proximity to our school buildings. As an example, Smart is a difficult building in that their evacuation site is listed as, right now, as Putnam, or Monroe, I'm sorry. Obviously, that's a difficult challenge, and there needs to be things put in place in their emergency operation planning for evacuation that would help facilitate that were it to become necessary. But one of the things I'm looking at doing, and I'll work with Andy on it more, is to try to shore up some of those distances and make it more practical for the evacuation. But there are no easy answers. The buildings don't exist in close proximity to the schools, and so we have to have a solution for a building that allows for the evacuation to take place.
Because I know in some instances, for example, Washington's evacuation site at one point was Sudlow. But if there was an incident or something that required both schools, I mean, the proximity is very close, but both schools to evacuate someplace, I don't know if do schools have secondary sites that they're to go to?
Each building has a secondary site, and for each building, it's the same in the district, and that is the River Center in Davenport. Part of what the schools are tasked with doing in their emergency operation planning and their evacuation preparation is to plan with Durham Bus, who has also been in contact and been worked with on providing transportation from our buildings to our secondary evacuation site. So that's been in place and has been discussed. But in the case of like Sudlow, Genesis is one of the sites that they've listed as a possible secondary evacuation site. Genesis has changed significantly since that was originally put in place and would be something that needs to be looked at further. But there are plans for secondary evacuations.
Yeah, we had at the time, we had a lot of difficulty finding a contact person up there when we were trying to establish those things.
Correct, and one of the things that we're working on, Mr. Maloney and I have discussed, and I've worked with Scott County Emergency Management on creating some better communications between us and vital role players in our emergency planning like Genesis. So hopefully we'll improve on some of those things, but everybody's busy and it's sometimes difficult to get everybody together to sit down and discuss these things.
Well, and contact people change. That's what we were finding out. You never had the same person to contact up there.
So one of the things Andy did before I got here is every year, before the school year began, he required the principals to make contact with their evacuation sites to confirm the evacuation information was accurate. excuse me, I've taken that upon myself this summer. Although I am going to ask that the principals do it themselves again, because that's important. They have the relationships with those buildings going into the school year. But there will be contacts made with those evacuation sites to confirm their participation in our emergency operations.
Okay, thank you, Bruce.
You're welcome.
Anything else? Okay, and so the use of security cameras, again, we just voted on this, and the one change is the official definition of school officials, and so Bruce added in the other people who are now considered school officials. So if anybody has any questions, now would be the time to ask. Thank you, Bruce.
Thank you.
Okay, our next policy is the new policy on fees and associated with curricular and extracurricular activities. But actually, I noticed that Rob is not here, and he's been the one that's kind of heading this up. So I guess I would suggest that maybe we put this one off to the next meeting, regular meeting.
I just don't know what the sense, I think there is a sense of urgency.
Right, but I don't know if I can answer
I
questions.
understand, but just if there were a way maybe to encourage board members to really evaluate it, perhaps give you questions ahead of time.
Let's do
I'd
that.
like to consider voting on it at the next meeting.
Well, we could assign it as homework per se and have people bring questions. The policy committee will meet before the next regular meeting. So the policy committee will meet on August. August 7th. And our next regular meeting is the 12th. So if we could have people submit questions to the policy committee that we could address. And then
Could we have a discussion of that particular policy at the committee of the whole meeting?
I couldn't understand.
I'm sorry, Bruce, I couldn't really understand what you were saying.
I think that we have the discussion of that policy at our next committee of the whole meeting.
I don't know. What are the rules
Well,
on that?
Here's the issue. The issue is that that policy has to be enacted right now. We can't continue to just wait around. And that's why I'm really concerned about this. We can.
But we're not gonna.
You're breaking up again, Bruce.
We can't hear you, Bruce.
If we do our questioning at the then it could be on the agenda for the first meeting in August. Or the second meeting, I suppose.
I understand the second meeting. I'll check tomorrow with legal. I'm just concerned Bill, you're looking confused.
Well, I think I'm hearing what Bruce is saying. You could have a conversation at the committee of the whole, still have time to take it to the policy committee, and then still have time to vote on it.
Yes.
But I think what he's saying is it would be in the second meeting.
No, he meant the second meeting of the month, the first regular meeting.
Still be the first regular
Yeah.
meeting, which is still.
It's before school starts.
Okay, and that's fine. I don't mind that. I just don't, for a whole lot of reasons, I think we've got to expedite it.
And I will find out if Rob is going to be able to attend that committee of the whole meeting. And if he's not, I will figure out a way to.
I'll do that.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Dan.
I just had a quick question. I think Rob had answered it at the policy meeting about the sponsor banners at the events and stuff. Because like football season's right around the corner, you got baseball going right now.
We got an answer for that.
I just want to know if you were able to do that.
I didn't get an answer for that yet.
Because I know Rob had said something, I couldn't hear him. The question is during like sporting events, if the team goes and gets a sponsor and they hang their banner on the fence at either Brady Street Stadium, baseball game, whatever the case may be, and they take it down at the end when they're the home team, are they able to do that as a way to raise money for like the team equipment and stuff like that?
I'll need to check in on that, check Iowa code.
If you could let me know, that'd be really great as soon as you can, because these guys are going to start wanting to do this.
Yeah, I will do that.
And I do remember mentioning at the policy committee meeting that we could discuss the policy. There apparently was a policy that the district had established to not do that. But I think the policy committee thought it was time to think outside the box and at least explore the option. If it's not legal, obviously we're not going to do it. So. Okay, so we will bring this one to the committee of the whole meeting for discussion. The last policy is our closing schools policy, and after a lot of research, there are no templates from the IASB or ISFIS or any statewide agencies. No school districts that I could find actually have policies on closing schools. There are a few articles made available through the Iowa Department of Education. And basically, all of the comments that school boards make or departments of education make suggest that it should be a careful, considered process, and the public should be involved. And so what I did was take the advice of the IASB, and I wrote a little paragraph at the beginning recognizing that it's a difficult decision, and that we will follow the recommended procedural steps, even though they're not mandated by law, from called the Barker Guidelines. Again, they were voided by law, but they are considered a good idea by the state. And so those are the 7 bullet points there. And then all of the detail on dates and specific timelines, those actually fall under administrative regulations because they're those types of details. And so we thought the board policy would be more appropriate as the guideline. And then when it comes time to make a decision, the first thing we're supposed to do is establish a timeline. And so then we would have in the administrative regulations a suggestion for that timeline. And we would establish that timeline. So I will entertain questions if anybody has them, or comments or feedback. No, it's not the same as last night because it had the whole thing. It had the whole thing. This is literally just the first paragraph and those 7 bullet points, because after the policy committee discussed it and we couldn't find any information on, nobody has a policy on it, that this would be more appropriate. It's broad. Dan, sorry, Director Gosa.
So it would go to the admin would give us through their regulation their timeline, and we can either accept that, change that up, or something.
Yeah, there are some legal requirements that the timeline has to have. For example, documents have to be posted 5 days prior to a public hearing. Any information that we have as a board in making a decision has to be available to the public at least 5 days before a public forum. And then there's a couple of timelines that are mandated in terms of, once this happens, that has to happen within a certain number of days. So we would, of course, keep those. But yes, there's no, we are the ones that do the closing of the school. So we will establish the timeline, essentially, is how that works.
Right, yeah, I was just asking because before.
So we can ask for guidance from the administration.
It was before, like, we would decide that, and then a new board would be like, we're shutting it down. Because that kind of happened to some of us.
Right. And this way, the board establishes the timeline. I think I mean, I can certainly add language suggesting, you know, a decision should not be made after X date of the school year. If people want that, you know, no later than whatever date in the school year in which the school is going to be closed. Or, you know, the amount of time dedicated to research and data collection should be at least, you know, X number of months or something like that. I mean, I'm certainly happy to entertain that. But this gives us as much leeway as we need. And it doesn't really matter when the board is seated, you know, which board is seated. It sort of sets things in motion, and the timeline is independent of election dates and things like that.
Thank you.
Anything else? Director Hayes?
Bullet point number 2, it mentions the board shall inform a segment of the community. With that particular bullet point, does that also include the city? 'Cause
I'm sorry, can you?
I said with that particular bullet point, does that include also like maybe the city? Because I know there was some extensive discussion when we talked about that previously. So I just want to make sure that we're still in
Yeah.
relationship with that.
So community isn't defined, but there are a few documents I found that sort of suggest who members of the community should be. And city is certainly one of them. And if we can put that into administrative regulation, or we could put some language into here saying segments of the community to include but not limited to, you know, the city, if you'd like.
I think I would, just to show good faith that since we have already had the
Yeah.
memo done. I think
So
it's
like
good
city,
to
parents, okay, that kind of thing. All right, I will put some of that language in and let you guys take a look. Yep. Anything else? All right, I think that's it.
All right, thank you very much for reading that. We'll move on to administrative reports.
None at this time.
Okay, great. Board requests, we have several.
Sorry, I had to handwrite one. I ran out of
Okay, it's
paper.
all right. These are really important. Okay, first is a board request, Director Beck, today's date. Request, I'd like to reconfigure the meeting schedule so that discussions happen right after open forum, at least on occasion. Why? The public comes to hear discussion most of the time. The amount of time it takes us to get through approval of bills, change orders, building projects, even with discussion of some projects, makes it hard for the public to stick it out. Is there a second?
Second.
When is ASAP? The one thing, would you prefer this, I guess it would be an agenda item.
I wasn't sure. I think agenda item, yeah.
I think it would be, because that is,
The agenda?
yeah, that's where we want to have it. Okay, next is,
I didn't understand the answer to that.
excuse me?
I did not understand the answer. You said something back to it.
I asked whether she wanted this to be an agenda item or an information request, and then she said she wasn't sure. I made the recommendation that it be an agenda item, so it'll show up on the board agenda.
Okay.
And then the board can discuss it. Next is a request from Director Beck, today's date. Description of the request. Please describe a rationale for cutting music in foreign language at Sudlow and other middle schools. Why are you requesting this information? I specifically asked whether students would still be able to participate in foreign language when we went to block scheduling, and was told yes. In addition, students had already registered for foreign language, and then these cuts happened. The board has specifically asked that cuts stay away from the quality of education, and this is in direct opposition.
I should clarify where it said the block scheduling, and I was told yes, because they can start foreign language in 7th grade. I forgot to write that part down.
I'll add it.
Thank you.
In which grade?
7th.
Okay. All right. That could
I
be,
second it.
okay, thank you. It could be either an agenda or information. It depends on how big you want that to be. Do you think the administration can just answer these, or?
I feel like given the amount of public feedback we've gotten, it should probably be brought up in a meeting. In a meeting as an agenda item.
Okay.
Discussion.
All right. Okay, next is Director DeSalvo, today's date, information request, list of electives for intermediate schools. What are music, instrumental choir programs at all intermediate schools? Why are you requesting this information to ensure
Consistency?
equity?
Yeah. Consistency.
Can't be consistency. You don't have enough letters there.
I know.
I'll say equity in intermediate class offerings. That probably, it means the same thing. Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. And when would you like this information?
How many ASAP?
Okay.
This is a hot topic right now.
Yeah. All right. Very good. Thank you. We have another request from Director DeSalvo. Date of request is ASAP. I think she probably meant today.
I did.
So.
I was free.
Okay, it's an information request. What foreign languages are offered at all intermediate schools? And why are you requesting this? Review consistency in intermediate schools.
Second.
When do you want it? ASAP. We're actually on the last one. I wanted to say thank you, board members, for all of this. You know, it is really important to ask these questions and to get them, either to get the information or to get these issues on the agenda. So thank you very much. Next is a request from Director Beck, today's date, agenda item, description. For a number of years, the board has discussed the possibility of a merit-based pay increase system for administrators who are not members of a bargaining unit. I would like to discuss the establishment of an ad hoc committee or task force to be comprised of board members, administrators, and other necessary parties. Why are you requesting this? Accountability is at the core of our district values and is central to the resolution of our Phase 2 audit. Is there a second?
Second.
When would you like this agenda item? As soon as feasible. So thank you very much for that. Thank you for all of those. And with that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
This meeting is adjourned.